One of the ways that you can support the podcast is by purchasing or picking up our limited edition apparel. The shirt that I have on right now is one of the only shirts that we've brought back for a second time. Normally we'll never do that, but the only reason we brought this one back for a second time is it sold out within 6 hours. So we brought this one back. We also got a second one that we just dropped. It's our, I guess, just Halloween edition shirt. Go to EliteFTS.com or go to the link in the description. This really does help us out because this directly supports the Table Talk podcast. Thank you guys. Enjoy the show.
Today's episode is brought to you by EliteFTS.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help EliteFTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, EliteFTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the EliteFTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is JP Price, co-owner of Strong Barbell Club, the first person raw to squat 1,000 and bench 6 in the same meet, and all-time world record with, actually, was it total or squat at 1,000?
So I had the all-time world record raw total.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then the squat was the first. Was it the first or was it?
So I had the fifth person to squat 1,000. And then the first person to go 1,600.
Yes.
And then the funniest story about the world record. Can I tell it real quick?
Sure.
So I may have the world record for having the shortest world record. So I was in a meet in Wichita. I was getting ready for Jesse Burdick's Reebok Record Breakers meet 3 weeks later. But I had told my friend that I would do this meet and I wasn't going to back out because I didn't know I could do the other one when I signed up for it, you know? So I show up and I had never done a raw meet without knee wraps before because when I got into the sport in 2012, everybody was in knee wraps if you were strong.
Yeah.
And so it was before raw was just really popular. So I had gotten up to 1,003 in knee wraps in May at the US Open, the first one of those. So then I trained without wraps on for the rest of the year into October, this time of year. And I went to that meet and had no idea what I could squat.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't have enough time to figure that out. Because you can't just go to 900.
Yeah.
You got to do a lot of 700 and 800s before you ever get to 900. And the most I think I did in training was 881. And that was my opener.
Yeah.
And it was tough. But then I went to like 909. And then I think I went to 927 or 925, whatever it is. And then my bench that day was 628. And then my deadlift, I actually missed my second and got it on my third. And that gave me the all-time world record. And originally, that record was it belonged to I'm going to screw up the name right, Don Reinhout.
Oh yes.
So Don Reinhout that was one of the longest standing records at the time.
God, yes.
And then Josh Morris broke it, and then I broke it, and then 2 hours after I broke it, Ray Williams broke it.
Oh really?
And then 3 weeks later, I tried to re-break Ray's record at Record Breakers, and I went 8 for 9, going 960 and 639, and then 760, I think, was my second deadlift, and I got it. And then I missed 788 to re-break the record.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think I have the world record for the shortest world record there.
Maybe because I've seen, and I don't know how this works because I never really inquired or even thought about it until you said it. I've seen some meets when the WPO was the multiply and the Arnold big time. I've seen people break all-time world record totals. And then the next person who's after them beats that. Yeah. And I always wondered, it kind of counts, right?
You only have to have it for a second, I feel like. You know?
I know.
Now, the funniest thing about it was back then we didn't have open powerlifting. We had Powerlifting Watch.
Yep.
And the guy from Powerlifting Watch actually emailed me, I believe. And he said, hey, you're a nice guy. Like, I'm going to leave that up for 24 hours. Get your screenshot.
No, that's cool. That's definitely cool. That's cool.
So I thought that was sweet of him.
Yeah. So we were talking about some stupid gym tricks before we started, but fortunately you sent a couple podcasts for me to listen to of you and Matt. So there's a lot of shit.
We were stoned. Okay. So I just want to let you know.
No, there's a lot of territory to cover here. You started training when you were 12, right? Why?
So I'm not very tall. And I think people always expect, because I like fill up the mono, that I'm like 6'3". I'm 5'10". You know, maybe I was 5'11" before, maybe in cleats. I don't know.
Yo,
I think my
maybe.
coach put me at 6 foot. You don't play football barefoot.
Yeah, but if you're heavy enough, the cleats,
They
you know what
sink in further. So I started training when I was 12. I was probably 5 foot tall and 5 foot around, real chubby,
Mhm.
bowl cut. I wore a lot of flare leg Jinko jeans, you know, which was super flattering on a chubby kid.
Mhm.
You know, listened to a lot of Korn and Limp Bizkit. And my dad was a good football player. He's like 6'3" and around 300 pounds. So he goes, look, here's the deal. You're not tall and you're not going to be. And if you want to be competitive, like you should probably get stronger. And I was like, well, I like that. And my coach was in middle school, actually. I had an amazing middle school coach, and he still reaches out to me, and I still talk to him. And man, the things he says to me, the way he encourages me as an adult, like he did as a kid, I still cry
Really?
when he talks to me. And just his name's Nick Gabar. So Nick Gabar was one of the best influences in my life. And when we were in 6th grade, he had us row, and we had a bench machine. We didn't have any free weights. We had a bench machine, and I could stack it.
Like the universal machines?
Yeah. And like the old school, like chains on them, that kind of thing, chain drive.
Yeah.
And so we just had a couple machines, and I was good at it, and it gave me confidence. And I was like, shit, I could feel good about myself.
Yeah.
This is cool. And so they took me up to this gym called Popeyes, and it was just an old school bodybuilding gym. And there were some guys there that bodybuild and some trainers, and they got me an appointment. They got me like 2 weeks, I think, with this trainer that just showed me how to use a circuit. And I could only use the circuit for 2 years. It worked.
Yeah.
My first day in the free weight room, I benched 225.
Mm-hmm.
First day.
Yeah.
I weighed 200 pounds, but
Yeah.
But so when I was 14, my freshman year of high school, I came in at 225 on the bench and the hang clean, and like I think 430 on the squat. And at the end of that year, 9 months later, I benched 315 and clean 315. So I just blew up as far as that's concerned. And so I knew I wasn't going to be tall, but my freshman year of high school, I was probably the strongest kid in the school. My freshman year of college, I was the strongest kid on my team in football and the strongest kid in the school because I didn't have height. You know, I didn't have what these coaches wanted, this thing that they thought was so important. So I was determined to like figure out my own way. Now I played smaller school ball, which you can be a little shorter and play smaller school ball.
Yeah.
But I had a great time, and the weightlifting really gave me the confidence. And you hear that a lot. Like Jordan Shallow said in episode 36, I listened to it because my name was said during it. And so Jordan said at one point, for him, he was like, look, wait, let me backtrack on that. So it felt good to be good at something.
Mm-hmm.
It felt good to, excel at this, and it felt good to let it make me feel good. And I can't remember where I was going with Jordan, but that'll probably come back to me.
Yeah.
Anymore, when I try to reach for thoughts, I'm always like, look, if that's important again, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, no problem. So how were you? I mean, 12 is a weird age, especially when you're in sport.
Mm-hmm.
Before you started training, were you playing, or were you riding the bench? Like, where were you before that?
So when I was 11, I was wrestling.
Yeah.
And I was bad.
Yeah.
And our singlets were like cut to where like my little titties were hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not comfortable for me, man.
Yeah.
Like I wore a shirt under it. I wore a shirt when I swam in the pool.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good about that shit. And so, man, I was not that good at sports at that time. I was not good at baseball. Once wrestling came around, the first year I sucked, but then that coach, Nick Gabar, he said, hey, if you want to play football, you have to wrestle. And we had 70 kids on the wrestling team in my middle school. And you couldn't do that now, but I'm so glad he did.
Yeah.
That's why he was such an influence to me, because he like saw some greatness in people that could not see anything in themselves. And he called all the big guys moose.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd say, where's my moose at? So like all the chubby kids were super confident with Coach Gabar because he gave us this title, and so much so that like I was fishing in Canada with my dad and my uncle, and we saw a moose in the water. I ended up getting it tattooed, but also like he would call us that. Like it has this great resonance with me for, somebody building somebody up when they didn't have to, you know? It was great to have that experience.
So what was the next year like after you started training when you went to wrestle?
So the next year in 7th grade, undefeated. The next year, 8th grade, same kind of thing. Then I went into high school. And after my freshman year, they probably like pushed me a little too far in it. Like I wasn't that good. I was like 23 and 18 my freshman year as a heavyweight. And then I was ranked 6th in the nation, and Cain Velasquez from the UFC was ranked 4th. But this is when we were in high school. And so I got ranked pretty high in it, but then I ended up shitting the bed at state. And but I loved wrestling because it was an individual sport. And in my high school, our team sports at that time were not that great. And so it just felt good to have something you could work on and like literally see the result right there. When you're with 11 other people and you're trying to see the result from you getting better, it's a little more challenging.
I have a almost identical story.
Yeah.
To where, getting beat up all the time. And then the same thing with the football and the wrestling thing. Like, you got to wrestle. And I didn't want to wrestle. I really didn't want to wrestle because I get my ass kicked all the time anyhow. So I figured, why am I going to do this just to get my fucking ass kicked even more? And right around the same age, 6th grade, 7th, right around there, fish, I'm getting pinned every time. And then the little universal machine, and I was strong, right? God-given, I don't know why. And I had a coach that saw that, then was pushing it and then reinforced that, the harder you work, you'll never get beat. And then came back, never got beat. Similar thing, because it's the confidence. It was just a pivot. But then I went on a rampage, after I got a little stronger, going back and seeking revenge on everybody that kicked my ass, and then that became problematic, right? Where that's how I got into powerlifting, because that became problematic and was causing more issues than not. Right. And so it was here, my father pushing me into a gym that was just a powerlifting gym. He didn't care. It was just the chief of narcotics ran the gym and they all powerlifted. So, 13, I'm in there powerlifting. I'm going to a meet and I was good at it. Right. And then all of a sudden I didn't want to do all the other shit anymore because I didn't want to get kicked out. Right. And they knew what my history was, right? Because I had a record, right? Now it's been sealed, right? Because you're juvenile, but sure. But it was that's kind of the leads into why I even founded the company in the first place. Because there's always those people that come around in your life and you don't know why, but what a pivotal moment for that, right? Because now you have confidence and all this other stuff, and it led me to the sport that I've been able to create a life from, right? Where now I had this weird thing going from junior high to high school though with the wrestling, because I was right at the gap between being super heavyweight or not.
I was my freshman year. I was 220 pounds. Yeah. And one of my friends was 215. And so I was like, look, I'm probably a little better. I'll go heavyweight. You go 215. And I just didn't want to watch my food. I just wanted to get big. So I gained 20 pounds a year in high school, 220, 240, 260, 280. And so I wasn't that good my freshman year, but I got my ass kicked a little bit. But my sophomore year, I started beating the shit out of people. Yeah. And I learned I could pick them up.
You see, I went a different route because I was kind of positioned into this football or wrestling. And my spirit and soul was wrestling. But I didn't want to be a super heavy, right? Because I practiced with them. It's like, this isn't the same sport as it is, lighter, that one class down. And I knew if it was football, because I was a lineman, I had to go up. I had to gain more weight. So I was influenced to make the decision that I kind of have regretted since, but you can't do anything about it. Yeah. But it was good in hindsight, because I don't know if I would have just stayed with wrestling if I ever would have learned the value of a team. Yeah. Because I never liked a team before all that, because I didn't fit in. Right. So you're kind of on the outside. Yeah. And then when I did start training hard and I'm working hard, this even happened with football. It pissed me off because I'm working so hard and nobody else is. Then we get beat. And it's like, what's the point? Right. Where with powerlifting, that's not the case. Right. Right. And with wrestling, that wasn't the case.
I grew up on teams. I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, and I live in Kansas City now, and it's so much more different for my sons than it was for me. I never had to try out to be on a team when I was little, and we sucked at everything. My teams always were not good. And so I got some humble pie when I was a kid, and I didn't feel success until I wrestled and did it on my own, and so I always loved team sports. I was always usually pretty good at leading, and so I would always be a team captain, whether it was wrestling or football or even college football. And so I love the team sport aspect, but I also love the control that I had in wrestling. And so I wrestled through high school. I lost in the semifinals at state my senior year and got really upset and decided to play football at that moment because, you know, wrestling is tough. And I respect wrestling way more than football by a lot.
The work ethic. Is
Yeah, but
level.
I didn't want to spend 4 years in college not having fun.
Yeah.
And wrestling wasn't fun. It was good, but it wasn't that fun. Not in college. It's too tough. And everybody's so good, you know? And so I really enjoyed playing college football. I went to Benedict, and it's a small school outside of Kansas City in Atchison, Kansas. I played right guard, like the deodorant.
Yeah.
That's how I always got my mom to remember what I played. Right guard, like the deodorant. She'd ask me over and over. And so I played football there, and then I was training in a garage gym doing like strongman and, you know, kind of fledgling powerlifting. I never competed in powerlifting because I always had these sports goals and these things I was doing for sports, and I felt like I couldn't powerlift yet. So I got done playing college football, and while I was working at the college for a few years as an admissions person, I started playing a little rugby, which was fun too, but that wasn't great on the neck.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, my neck really suffered during that, and that was kind of the first like injuries I ever dealt with, you know, and it still impacts me today probably if I were to grease that groove.
Yeah,
which I don't. And so I was doing, you know, just some kind of weird cross training style with my workout partner at 4:30 in the morning every day because he had 7 kids and taught philosophy at the college. So we were working out in the mornings at 4:30. And then after that phase of my life, I did that till I was probably 25. And then I had done a strongman at some point, weighing 265. I had lost a bunch of weight. And that went great. It was fun. And then it wasn't until about 3 years later, I was getting my hair cut at a barber, and the guy in front of me was getting a mohawk shaved into his head with like a straight razor, and he was jacked and tattoos everywhere. And he's a bench only guy. So he's a bench only guy. And he goes, dude, I powerlift, but I'm bench only. You got to meet this guy, Ben Moore. He's the power lifter. So I hooked up with Ben Moore, who was a lightweight pro strongman and ended up having a well over 2,000 pound total at heavyweight and 308 in his day. And now Ben and I are old dogs, you know, being dads and whatever feels comfortable. But Ben got me into the sport, and that's all I needed. I was 28, and then I think the world record was at 33. So it took 4 or 5 years to get into it, but my first total was like 1630, and then by the time I was done, that was my subtotal.
Yeah.
So
what about it pulled you in?
So I was doing CrossFit at the time, and I was coaching high school wrestling just as a volunteer at a really good program, and just coached the heavyweights. And he started talking to me about it, and you know, I'm divorced now, and my wife at the time, Jenna, we get along awesome, so shout out. And so she's like, you know, I think you should give that a try, like something competitive, like you need this consistency, you know? And it was great. And I'll tell you what, you know, the best part about being a dad and a power lifter that we ever got was my consistent schedule, because I'm not always that consistent with my scheduling. I'm a little bit more artistic and all over the place, and I don't mind living like that. I love my life, and I love, you know, doing what I like and what I want when I want to do it. And but that consistency was good for me. And so she would train in the morning at 5 a.m. and I would train after the kids went to bed. So even my world record was when I had toddlers. And so the second child, when he was being born, I have Jack and Jay. Jack's 11, Jay's 8. So when Jay's being born, it's on a Thursday night, and we're in the hospital, and I'm like, hey, I think we're going to go home on Saturday afternoon. What's our schedule this weekend? What do we need to do? And she goes, well, Saturday, let's like get to the store and get set up for the week. And then Sunday at noon, you squat. No days off.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was taken away from my family to powerlift. I had fit it into my life in a way where it did not screw with my family. And I'm sure there were hiccups here or there. I'm sure there's a meet where I missed a game or whatever. But I never really missed my kids' life for training. You know, they went to bed at 7. I went to the gym at 7:30. So I worked out at night. She worked out in the morning. And then on Sunday, I squatted during nap time because they took 3-hour naps at noon. So back then the Chiefs sucked, so I didn't watch them.
Yeah.
I didn't watch them. We'd be squatting at noon, and my kids would be sleeping. Then I go to the store and come home and meal prep.
Do you think that would have been the case if you were competing before?
I don't know. I never got into the sport before. I was always around as like a spotter or a helper. I've seen meets. But it just never really, compared to the sports I was playing, it didn't really interest me that much.
Yeah.
I got strong to be better at those. And I didn't fall in love with just training, until later. Here's something I will remember about Jordan, and this is probably what I was going to say earlier, is he fell in love with training more than hockey. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I knew that I was way better at moving a barbell than any sports implement, So I fell in love with it because I was good at it. I walked in and I could perform. We all love to do shit we're good at.
Yeah. Well, that happened to me in high school, to where it was powerlifting is my main sport.
Right.
All the other things are like accessories to that.
I just wonder what if. And I don't care about what if. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I only got one great year out of my body. I had 2016 where I had 3 totals over 2,300 in a row. And that was a good year for powerlifting for me.
Yeah.
I thought I deserved 3 of those.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get them, but I thought I deserved 3 of those. And I tried to come back and manage my injuries in 2018, 2 years later. And I just couldn't. I thought I had a hip thing going on. And the doctors thought I had a hip thing going on too. And you were talking on the same episode of Jordan about this stuff with your back. You thought, because it felt in your groin and your low back, you thought it was your back, but it was your hip.
Yeah.
So here's the weird shit with mine. So I had only posterior pain. Okay. And it was in, like, people always say my SI joint hurts. Usually that's going to be low back pain because that nerve goes down there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you show them just a picture of the body's nerves, you can see where that shit will flow. It makes immediate sense. An episode happens here, you feel it here. And so I went to KU Med, even where the Chiefs go. I went on the Chiefs facility in Arrowhead and got an MRI and a big MRI machine. And they did some procedure, stuff on me to figure out. So to figure out if I had a torn hip labrum or not, which usually hurts in the front, in the anterior side, mine was in the back. They said, well, 95% of these hurt in the front. You're one of the 5%. And they're like, makes sense because you're, weirdly strong.
Yeah.
And so maybe you're an outlier, So the procedure they did to make sure that I had a torn hip labrum and they wanted to do surgery on me is they injected some pain stuff into the front of my hip. And then they had me move around and say, hey, like, does this hurt? And it didn't, so they go, okay, cool. Torn hip labrum. We're going to have surgery on that. Well, I don't think anybody thought about the fact that they just killed that nerve behind that area when they did that shot, and it was my back, not my hip. So I had hip surgery, and then before hip surgery, to try to keep me pieced together. Okay, you talk about your relationship with your physical therapist or chiropractor you worked with. So Aaron Horschig from Squat University, he lived in Kansas City, so he was my PT, and we worked together all the time, mostly for fun because he liked me and I liked him. And so then I had surgery, and he did my rehab program from the Chiefs hip doctor through KU Medical Center in Kansas. And so we were going through the program, and at about month 3, I'm squatting, like 450 pounds with a SSB to a box. And at some point, the pain is worse than it was before. So then they had corticosteroid injections. And then that was in June. And then, my first surgery was in February. My second surgery was in June. My third surgery was in September. And they did nerve ablations, and they cut nerves in my back. They cut 6 or 8 of them. And it got worse. They said, oh, you're an outlier. You're just one of the guys that, and man, I just got the feeling after 9 months of this shit that they had no clue what they were doing. And I got really upset, and Aaron was upset, and he's trying to be my advocate. And so I called a meeting with the head of surgery for spines at KU Med. And he said, look, JP, with what you've put your body through and what you're feeling, we could fuse your whole spine and not know if we're going to help. It would be a guess. And they were like, let's do another series of injections. And I was like, let's not. I'm fucking done with this.
Yeah.
And so then Aaron emailed Stu McGill, and that's when Stu McGill took me as a patient, let me come stay at his house for a couple days, and got into my back. And he so I brought my MRI imaging disc with him, and Jordan mentions this too, and you guys are talking about clinicians, and this is all resonating with me while I'm listening to it because of my experience. And so what had happened was he first did a psychological evaluation on me, to make sure he felt like I was ready to receive treatment the way he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's kind of like you vetting clients. You don't want to work with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, you're past that.
Mm-hmm.
And so first we did a psych eval, and then he did a movement evaluation for 3 hours. He tested me, he retested me, he tested me, he retested me, and I didn't even know it, but he did 7 tests to try to trick me into trying to, you know, skirt around what was actually happening. And all 7 were conclusive, right, of, you know, what was really happening. And he gave me a diagnosis. And then he looked at my MRI to confirm it.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't look at images first. He looked at function first and the tissue. And he figured out how I could move and what I couldn't do. And he had developed that system to figure that out. I think that's in the back mechanic book predominantly. Yeah. And so he had used that whole system on me and then conclusively told me what he thought was wrong with me. And that's the moment I started getting better.
What were the next steps?
So at that time I had lost about 90 pounds. I think the most I ever weighed was I got on a scale before the 2018 US Open the night before weigh-ins, and it was a 400-pound limit scale. That's why I have a 551-pound limit scale in my gym. So a 400-pound limit scale, and it said E for error. Fuck.
What do you think?
I think I was probably 403 because the next day I weighed in at 396 in the morning. Yeah. So I had gotten down. I competed again 2 years ago I weighed 302 and I was in the 308 class. So I could say here's the thing. I'm hard on myself about stuff like this. I will never say I lost 100 pounds because I didn't hit 300 because I don't know how heavy I was that day. Yeah. So until it says 300 instead of 302, fuck it. Yeah. You know, I'm not there. And I'm also not going to help anybody with that shit until I can keep that off for a year. So I'm like 340 right now. It's not excusable. I feel way better at 310. You know, my goals of how I want to move my body right now and how I want to be able to live the rest of my life, it's not a 340-pound frame. Yeah. Now I competed way heavier and I was way less healthy at the time. But, you know, all those recovery goals are going to be better, lighter. You know, all that impact's going to be better, lighter. Bending over to pick up that Lego, it's going to be way easier, lighter. Yeah. You know, and you're going to put way less pressure on your spine, lighter. And you're not going to have to worry so much about activating your glutes when you bend down, you know, because the truth of the matter is we're not going to. You know, we're always going to bend over errantly. We're not going to untrain that in us. Now we could get better about it, and more often we can move with intention, but it's just impossible to think that we're going to, you know, get better about that. And it's going to be done, you know, like that. We're always going to have this pain car chasing our healthy car. Yeah. And what we can do to keep those two apart, you know, something's going to happen sometimes with the healthy car and the pain car is going to jump in front. But I feel like our training life is all about trying to put distance between those two. Yeah. So that you're not at risk all the time.
Did he pull training away from you?
So, Stu or Aaron?
Stu.
Okay. Yeah. So Stu basically told me he doesn't think I should ever do more than 2 reps on a compound movement ever again.
No, I'm saying after he diagnosed you.
Oh, yeah.
And moving forward.
So Stu made me rest completely for about 6 months.
And how'd that go?
Mentally or physically?
Both.
So I have probably 4 or 5 different symptoms in my spine that he diagnosed, and 2 or 3 got a lot better in about 3 months of rest. And during that time, I was really only doing the McGill Big 3. But to be honest with you, I'm such a naturally good lifter that I am very shitty about doing my drills. Okay. Like demoing them earlier is probably the most I've done my drills in the last couple months, even though I had an episode in August. It is just hard to change your mind from being a skilled elite lifter to having to maybe be able to lift today because rehab didn't go well. You know what I'm saying? So Stu pulled it all away from me to the point where I went nuts about it, you know, and I remember I was my back hurt even when I was benching or overhead pressing because I had a small little arch in my lumbar spine because I couldn't get much arch in my thoracic. So he made me go like flat foot and stuff. But before I was even there, I was using a soft box for my feet, and I was benching like 565 with a soft box with my feet. Yeah. And I remember one day I lifted the bar out and I got it, and I was so mad about my situation that I had my feet on this fucking box that I got up from the bench heated and I grabbed the box and threw it across the gym. I was mad about it, you know? And so then at that point in my recovery, I was, you know, I had lost almost 100 pounds. I looked and felt great compared to how I had felt before. It's like the first time in my life I've felt handsome, and felt good about like the work I was putting into my body. And so as I got better and as I went through the program, and then COVID hit. And I was actually up here around then in March at the 2020 Arnold. Mm-hmm. So COVID hit, and we started renovating the gym, but we were closed for like 5 weeks, and it wasn't good for me mentally, to be honest with you. And I needed more of an outlet. So that's when I started benching with my feet up, even though Stu didn't really want me to. Mm-hmm. But I did have a conversation with him. So Stu doesn't look at a lot of social media or anything, but at one point I got an email and I was like, "Hey, JP, have you been doing some things that we didn't really talk about you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, Stu, I mean, stuff's kind of rough at home and I really wanted to work out. And I feel like, benching with my feet up or floor pressings is, going to be okay." And he goes, "No, that's okay." And so then I actually saw that he had worked with Andrew Locke out of Australia, Dr. Andrew Locke. He's a physiotherapist out of Australia. And Andrew Locke and him worked together a little bit. So Stu, who's very much, pull training away and get healthy and then introduce very slowly. Andrew is, well, here's what we're going to do to make sure you're not being affected negatively by this right now, and you can do it. Mm-hmm. And I needed that attitude in my life. Andrew is like Coach Kabar. Andrew is an enabler. He's an empowerer. He's going to make you feel like a god while you're his friend. Mm-hmm. And 'cause he's so positive. And so immediately he put a band around my knees and flattened my feet on the bench, and I had no pain because my glutes were on.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. That's why we shot a little video earlier about if your back hurts or wake up and you feel janky and you can't move great, and you feel like sometimes you feel like your body's not all a unit, and like we talked about that earlier with the different muscle twitches from injuries. And so sometimes you just got to come in and put a hip circle on your knees, or booty band or whatever, or some kind of an elastic on your knees, and get proprioception. And I just walk around with it on. I've got an older client that I worked with that's a little older than me, and he's got a lot of experience lifting, but he's hurt all the time. And after he would train over his lunch hour, he owns the gym and coaches people too. So his instruction would be, hey, after you're done squatting or deadlifting, go ahead and put your thing on your knees and walk around coaching your next client for a half hour with it on. And that's going to leave you from your workout feeling better. Yeah. Because sometimes we get done working out if we're, guys that are impacted like that. And it sucks. It hurts. So sometimes you need some drills to leave the gym too.
Well, one of the biggest, I don't want to say downfalls, were the lifters that I've seen struggle that will work with Stu is during that time period of what he would call surgery without a knife. Mm-hmm. Basically, you're not doing anything. Yeah, because it's hard. Right. It's very hard. And but it sounds like you got 6 months of doing that before you lost your shit. Yes. Where that's way more than most.
I'm surprised I got that far, to be honest with you. I think I just respected Stu so much, and, it really helps to work with people you respect a lot, because if you respect them, then you're going to, respect what they ask you to do a lot more. And I thought it was very important to try to listen to him until I just couldn't anymore, and I still tried to keep his principles mindful. But I knew that he had worked with Andrew and that it was probably a pretty safe, lineage to go from one to the other. Mm-hmm. But I did get his blessing on it. And one cool thing about both those guys is after going through that program enough, they did give me said, hey, you can help people with this too. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you're not a doctor, you're not a surgeon, but you can help people with these drills. You can help, pass this on and help people's backs feel better. And it's been a blessing. That's been cool. It's, it's given me more value in what I can do right now and what I offer to my community.
To go in a different direction here, when did you start the gym and why did you start the gym?
Good question. So I was in a sales job where I worked with high school athletic teams and I helped them fundraise. And I was good at it. I liked that job. It fit my personality. In most high schools, there's not that many great coaches. There's a lot of great people. But most high schools, they can't have 10 good coaches in 10 different sports. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. They've either got like that one asshole wrestling coach that's good, or that one football coach that's good, or that volleyball coach that's had 10 teams in the And so when I would go into the school, I would be able to raise their level up in what I did. And I loved that. And over time, it was a grind. I was driving 45,000 miles a year, and I wasn't having fun anymore. And for me, like, I have to love shit I do in order to keep doing it. And, I just am not going to have a soulless existence. And so I had just set the all-time world record in powerlifting and then had it taken away.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I had gotten in, it was just me and Ben. And then eventually there were 10 of us, and then there were 20 of us. And then I think at some point even 35. And we had this whole corner to the gym, and we were hosting meets and buying equipment, and the team was building all this stuff up. And at one point, I've always felt like if I was ever going to complain about anything, then I would just get involved and be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And if I'm not willing to be a part of the solution about something, I'm also not going to bitch about it ever. That's like my personal rule for myself. Kind of like I don't drink anything with calories unless I'm getting hammered.
Yeah.
It's like that's one rule that I can keep. Simple.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I think there's something here. I think I could be enough of a leader. I think I could be enough of a meet director. I think I could be enough of a coach and enough of a manager of a gym that I could do this. And so the gym that I was working at, I had this meeting, and I was like, hey, can we blow out this wall and put this other area in? They can pay more to go back there, and it's going to have all our stuff. And then we won't have to have it locked up, because we were worried about general population using 2 reds on bench and dying.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't know it was 264, just right to the throat. They think they're benching 225.
Yeah.
And they always thought we were assholes for locking everything up, but it was for their safety. And so we blew out a hole in the wall, and we made a gym in the back for strength sports. And it was apart from the, mostly commercial and bodybuilding style gym that we had. And long story short, that owner fucked me over and went bankrupt. And one of the 2 people in the world I want to open hand slap if I see him. I'm a very nice guy, and I've never really actually been in a fight that was my fault or anything. Just been a part of a lot of them, but never one where it was like me wanting to throw down, I'm more of a cooler, know? And so I hate him. And then the guy that took over after him was worse. And he still owns the gym down there. And I had to depose against him in court one time, and I think I said in the court document that I thought he should die or something. I don't know. Anyway, 2 people I don't like. And so I had that hip surgery. And when I had that hip surgery, I was managing this gym and running that back room that had a couple hundred members. And my recovery was supposed to be 3 months, and I took 3 weeks off. Well, I didn't have any benefits, Dave.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have PTO. I didn't have vacation. I didn't have any of that shit. And these guys were getting pissed whenever I would like come up to the Arnold or go to California and compete. They were getting mad at me, and I'm like, you're making money off of me. Stop, And so I was supposed to be off for 3 months, and I took 3 weeks. And during that time, I remember I went to him and I said, hey, I came in to get my check. And he said, oh, you thought you were going to get paid while you weren't working? I'm like, you're making 15 grand a month off of the shit my team bought and my friends bought and my friends worked for the last like 6 years.
And people are still coming in and paying.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
And so I met with a realtor the next day and met with the guy that was suing him for taking that gym over in a way he wasn't supposed to. It's a big mixed up story. And it was long story short, I found a space. We met at the gym after hours one night, and I had a list of every item that we owned that belonged to us, that I knew belonged to us, that he had a copy of too. And I had 10 trucks and a moving truck and 36 people, and we were done in an hour. And we started lifting the next day at the new place.
Any problems getting the stuff out? Like him saying that it's his shit, not yours?
There would have been, but not the way we did it. The lawyer said, just go in and get out fast. And they couldn't say shit to me. I put up a video saying what happened, and they like threatened me and stuff. No, it was nothing. They had no leg to stand on. They're just bad people. Yeah. And so I left that up for a day, and then I washed my hands of it and never really spoke of it again,
Now, once you moved over, didn't you have issues with the building? Yeah.
So going back just a few more months here, I had interviewed this guy named Ethan Herrick, who's a multi-time national champion in weightlifting and Olympic weightlifting, best Olympic weightlifter in the city. And all we did was talk about wanting to open a gym together, but we had no courage or money.
Yeah.
And that guy disrespecting me like that gave me the courage to do it, period. I would have never done it if he wouldn't have treated me like shit. And I've not always had the most confidence in everything. I've had confidence in lifting, wrestling, football, whatever stuff I know I'm good at, but I've not always had the confidence to do stuff like that. And that guy gave me the confidence to fight for myself by treating me so poorly, you know? And I was determined never to have anybody in a position to treat me like that ever again. I could only be my own boss at that point. So Ethan and I found a space as quick as possible. We set up shop. We had a gym we were really proud of. We put all our heart, blood, sweat, and tears into it for a couple months. We opened up June 1st of 2019. And 2 weeks in, Matt Vincent was visiting the gym with Bonnie, and they were going to get a workout in, and I had brought him some coffee, and I'm holding these coffees, and I walk up to the door, and it's condemned. The roof collapsed overnight. We got enough rain that a vacant room that we didn't know about had this bow in it, and it burst like a pool on top of the building, flooded the inside, and it was bad. And really, in our gym, all we lost was our platforms. No big deal. Yeah. But it's not all we lost. I mean, we lost a week, you know? We had to figure out what to do next. Like, Dave, if you lost this building today, how long would it take you to find a new one?
Yeah.
You know? And man, we didn't know what to do. And so we just fought. And we found another building. And it was probably better. And then we stayed there for 3.5 years, 3.5 years. And then a year ago, 2 days ago, we moved into our new building. So we moved from 6,000 to 12,000 square feet and into a nicer area and a more populated area. And and it's grown. And man, it's been really awesome. But that's what gave us the courage to do it. That's how we got started.
Yeah. But then shortly after that, either the pandemic closes you down too, right?
Yeah, the pandemic closes us down. But honestly, our members, and they always have handled us with grace, but when that happened, we didn't know what to do. Nobody did. And we took 0 government handouts. We just didn't feel like we should be doing that at the time. And our members of our gym, we basically just said, hey, if you guys haven't changed your jobs, or if you're still getting paid normally and you're just staying at home, then, you know, please keep paying, because why wouldn't you? But if it has impacted you, or you're a server, or you're a bartender, or, you know, you're getting impacted right now, then say something and it'll be, you don't have to pay anything. You can still come here. You know, we were really laid back about it, I felt like, and serving them first. And then they were the same way with us. And that was cool. So during that time, our landlord was a really good guy. He actually said, hey, while we're shut down, why don't we renovate the bathrooms? We weren't supposed to do that till December, but that would have been while you're in business. Yeah. So we renovated the offices, he renovated the bathrooms, and we just worked the whole time. So that's how we got down with COVID. It just worked.
Yeah. Well, it seems to be a reoccurring theme. Like when you hit adversity, don't bitch about it.
Just work.
Well, bitch for a day.
Yeah.
And then figure it out and move forward.
Dude, I've had that happen recently. You know, I had an event happen recently that I really don't want to get into because it's not important, but, you know, I got my phone stolen. I got robbed. Unbeknownst to me at the moment, you know, I had a lot taken from me in a very short period of time, but in every rock bottom, there's hope. You know, I think the 14 months of therapy probably before that probably helped my mindset on that a little more. But yeah, you know, I'm not going to sit and wallow for long. You know, I'm not going to sit and wallow for long. I mean, I'll treat myself poorly physically, you know, maybe I'll drink a little bit here or there, or do whatever, you know, if I'm feeling down, but my mental adjustment to that is so much better now than it's ever been before. I try to tell my kids this all the time. Like, the key to life, it's this simple. It's just to be okay when you know you're not. You know, even if it's not okay, if you're okay, shit's going to be fine. You know,
or to remind yourself that it will be.
Yeah.
Right.
And so here's the funny thing. I think this is called, I might butcher this. I know a lot about a little. And so my therapist, she was telling me about, I think it's called psychiatric suggestion or something of that nature, where you say something, like speaking something into existence, right? So let's say I've got programming to do, and I like to do it late at night because I like it quiet. You know, phones are buzzing and shit during the day, and you can't get anything done, Dave. You know, at nighttime when it's silent, you know, and you've got your stogie or your, you know, whatever, you can chill. And that's when I sit there and do my stuff. You know, and sometimes you're sitting there thinking, fuck, I gotta get this done. Shit, I got the laundry, and it's manic, and then it makes you shut down and gives you anxiety. Yeah. And so instead of that, trying to rephrase something, there's a reason people say, I just want somebody to hold me and tell me everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because even saying that means there's a possibility it could happen. Right?
Yeah.
So if you never say that you're going to hold a world record or that you can or you're capable of it, you'll never believe that shit. But it goes with anything else too. So trying to reframe things, trying to not be self-deprecating, trying to not, treat yourself poorly or other people poorly around you just because it's a thing you're repeating that you've learned.
Yeah.
But, also like trying to make space for things. Like one time, so my therapist is kind of far out sometimes where we'll do like talk therapy for 45 minutes and then we'll do something where I like go lay down and she like puts bags on me and like stuff over my eyes and I'm holding EMDR buzzers that are going back and forth, right? All too much to get into. But during that time, one time, I was sitting there thinking like, how do I become more patient? Because I'm not patient. I'll go out and get stuff. So, you want something done, ask like a busy person. Or I'm not patient.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also insecurity. Not being patient is insecurity too. So I'm trying to develop patience and I'm just laying there and I'm like, how do I get more patient? And she goes, well, have you even tried to make space for that? And I'm like, I don't know. What does that mean? She goes, just try to, just say it. Just say, how do I make space to be more patient? Or I'd love to make space to be more patient. And I'm laying there in this pose and saying it made me start to believe it. And I start crying. So relaxing to feel that way, to know that you can help yourself feel that way anytime you need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of power.
Now, a lot of these things that you're speaking about when you were on your upswing, towards all-time world record and squats and all that other kind of stuff, were you using all these principles in one way or another in the gym for your training, but it took time for you to learn how to apply it outside of that space?
So I really didn't get into any of this until after we went through divorce. And when I really started to like have a microscope on myself of, okay, well, now she's gone and I'm realizing who I am, and, here's what I have to get better at.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went into therapy, they were like, hey, you need a mission statement, and mine was just to learn how to be in here and get to know myself better, good enough to know what I want and need. I think back in the world record days, I was still on cruise control, Dave. Like I hadn't gotten far enough in my life to start asking those questions yet. It seemed more simple at the time.
What is, but in a way, you're kind of asking those questions from one squat workout to the next because you're going to have to recover more, not recover more.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of those things I've always said a lot of things that we need in life, we're exposed to in the gym. I don't want to say we learn in the gym because sometimes you don't know it until you get away from it. Then you can look back at it and say, shit, I was kind of doing that. I kind of rested between sets.
I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and this is right up your alley because we're similar in this way. So we were talking about it, and we were talking about how I've lifted weights for so long. 27 years now is my training age. I'm 39 and I started at 12. And there were some things we did for 20 years that we didn't know was the right thing, proved by science until way later, or we were like, 10% off, and some of them we were 90% off on, like arching your back in the squat.
Yeah.
But some of them we were close, like just naturally, I only lifted 3 days a week when I was strong.
Mm-hmm.
And just all I had space for, I'm being a dad, owning a small business and driving 45,000 miles a year. I didn't have time for 4 workouts a week. Now, the good thing is I was so strong at the time. I also couldn't work out 4 times a week because it was too taxing on me.
Yeah.
And I was also fat and unhealthy at the time too, and so it was even more taxing. But that size helped at the time, So yeah, it's kind of funny when you look back at it. And I'm sure if somebody had some log of all the shit I did back then, and to be honest with you, like I had a plan sometimes, but I just went in and did it,
Yeah.
Consistency was key, not necessarily what I was doing, just the fact that I was doing it. And my body responded well always until it didn't.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when, because you have lifters and you have coaches, right? And they're two entirely different things, where I think sometimes I'll get that a little mixed up too, because I won't understand why, if somebody's a top lifter, why they don't know how to actually program worth of shit.
Sure.
But then I have to remind myself, well, somebody that plays in the NFL doesn't necessarily need to know how to coach the offense if they're just the lineman.
Yeah.
They need to know how things unfold.
Yeah.
But they don't need to know all that. They just need to do what they do.
Well, and I feel like the Bill Belichick's of powerlifting, the guys that weren't the great athletes that are the great coaches. And there are some people that are great athletes and coaches. If I'm being honest about how I feel about myself, I feel like I'm a pretty high achieving powerlifter, and I feel like I'm a coach who cares, and I do a good job for my people, but it's not my obsession and passion in the way that it is for some people. For me, I like to try to simplify things and make it easy enough to digest and be a part of your life for a long time. There's definitely people smarter than me, and I know that, but that's who I'm trying to learn from. And, I had to reverse engineer this. So I don't think that people that get to that level of strength often ever go back and then figure out how it happened.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. And I had to a little bit.
Yeah.
So that I could teach other people.
So what did you find when you did that?
So I found a lot of mistakes, but then I also found some good shit too.
Well, let's start with the mistakes.
Some of the mistakes, man. I mean, Stu saw a video of me squatting 1,000 before my first 1,000-pound squat in a meet. And there was a stall. Now in the meet, I was so strong that it just, I actually had to do it twice. I missed my second on it. I stepped forward. It was so fast. I was shocked. And I jumped the rat command.
Yeah.
We were using monos. I shouldn't have been walking out.
Yeah.
I always walked out of monos. It just felt more natural for me. I never really felt like I could come out of the mono with my glutes. And so now I know that it's more of a glutes thing to pick out of the mono.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel comfortable with it at the time. I felt better walking. And so we found out, from watching that squat that my knee moved a little bit. And that was the first sign of this going. That's when I needed that therapy. That's when I needed to know about this shit. And I didn't, the way that I got ready for workouts was never it, I'm like you, man. The only reason I learned any science is because I had to use it against myself when I got hurt, and that forced me to learn the most, is to unlearn what I knew and to relearn ways to make it better, and to take all the smartest people that I could pull shit from that I knew were good at what they did and that I trusted, and do what they were doing.
Well, the tricky thing with all that is when you're younger, you can get away with a lot of that shit.
Yeah.
But as you get older and you accumulate the mileage, you can't. So it's kind of the fucked up thing with the whole sport.
Yeah. I always say I was like a juggernaut until I wasn't.
Yeah.
I felt like I could lift and do anything in the weight room for a couple year period, and then I couldn't.
I'd say more than that, because if you're going into how you were training in high school and all the other stuff and all the other training, we were talking about stupid training tricks of going in the gym and just benching 315 raw,
right?
Just stupid shit like that. I think we can get away with it again when we're younger because we don't know any better.
Sure.
But looking back, it's like, that was kind of stupid. Then you wonder, had you not done that, would you got more years?
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking about that. So, and honestly, I don't even feel like this story applies to this because it was so easy for me at the time.
Well, that's,
but I was dropping my kids off at swimming lessons in YMCA, and they had this upper level gym that was a second floor. And the strongest guy, it was like 5 p.m., so it's packed. And the strongest guy at their gym had just done 405 for a set of 1. And I had just walked up there. And I was like, hey, man, just leave that on. Because I only had 25 minutes. And I needed to get like 5 sets of 10 done. So I just laid down and did 5 sets of 10 cold at 405. Because at the time, that's how strong I was.
Yeah.
I could do 405 for 25 at the time. So I didn't care. And it was a little, like, thinking about it now, it's, man, that's kind of unreal at the time.
I get it. I totally get it. Cause I wasn't that strong enough.
Or if I was late to work out and the guys were at 405, so was I.
Yeah.
A
shit like that I would do, just jump right in with wherever they are.
Yeah.
I can remember doing, and this is before I came to Westside. So I had more freedom, in a lot of the shit that I was doing.
Right.
I do back down sets of the bench with 315 and just ask whoever was lifting off to me how old they were. And that's how I figured out how many reps I was going to do. Just stupid shit like that.
There were periods in the off season, and I don't know how long this lasted. It was probably like 2 off seasons maybe, where the guys I trained with were very strong, but my bench was 640 at the time, you know, and I trained with a couple other guys that bench 500, you know, and so there was this period where their benches were down a little bit from there, mostly because one of them was in gear anyway, so he wasn't like training his raw bench really that much.
Yeah.
And so whenever we were working out in the off season, I didn't have a plan. Whatever they were doing, I'd just do a plate more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd be like, is this your top set? Okay, put a plate on. And then I just do whatever they were doing for 1 plate more. Just because
I get it.
I was keeping those guys in check, you know? I had to know.
Well, it's fun too. I mean, in your mind, it's fun.
Yeah.
You can bust their balls afterwards.
And honestly, like, you know, I think we can take a lesson that we don't know exactly how much we can pull back, but man, you can sure get a lot done pulling back.
Yeah. Well, that's the hardest thing that's the hardest thing to teach other lifters. Yeah. Where that's probably if I'm mentoring or helping any lifters at this point, they're not young, you know, that's the go-to thing. Mm-hmm. How do you pull back? It's all that, you know, because it's always way less than what they need to do, way less than they think.
It's funny. So the older I get, the more I like working with new lifters, high schoolers, 45-year-old dads that have never lifted before, 55-year-old moms or grandmas. Like, that's the most fun for me right now because they have the most success and they get turned into believers the fastest. You know, you get all these experienced guys and they're all just self-deprecating and hate themselves. Like, and so
it's a battle.
Yeah. I love these beginners, man. They're so fun. And, so like, let's say for example, this summer in May, I took on 3 new lifters that were all at like 200 with a safety squat bar. If they don't compete, by the way, EliteFTS safety squat bar, if somebody does not compete in powerlifting, only use that bar ever. Mm-hmm. Athletes, anybody, everybody, only that bar. There's no reason to go here. If you're not a power lifter, don't put your hands here. Just use the SSB, period.
Why do you think that?
Because it's easier. You know, it's harder on your body in a way, like your muscles work more in different areas, but it's so much easier on your body. It's so much easier on your low back and hips to be in this position that I use it. I have 4 of them and we use them all the time. And I'm not doing that to kiss your ass because you don't need it.
No, you can say that all you want. I'll clip the shit out of it.
But we use them. And I will say the only hard part is for older people is having I need a lighter version, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I need a 35 pounder or a 45 pounder that's just not as aggressive, that we don't have to put 800 pounds on. Because 65 is kind of a high barrier for entry for somebody who doesn't know anything, you know, but I digress. So I take these 3 guys on, all 3 of them squat 200. Okay. 4 months later, they all 3 squat 275. Okay. Now we're going off at 200 to get to 275, you know, and we had to do a little bit of RPE work, which they can't understand yet. So I'm doing the RPE work for them, the rate of perceived exertion, you know, 1 to 10, and I'm never putting them over a 7 or 8 ever, never a 9, never a 10, unless we're on an AMRAP and they have side spots, because as soon as they break, we take it. Okay. And when I say break, I mean 9, not 10.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, those guys have these huge gains. And then we start programming off of the new number. Okay. And they're like, wow, I really have a lot of gains with that lower number. And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to have that number be over 80% to have it be profitable.
Yeah.
Okay. You can do way more than you think with less. And it's honestly, Dave, I'm talking to myself here because I know that I used to come in and do what I did, but right now in my life, with where my recovery is at and where my body feels every day and how close I am to having possibly another low back pain episode, I should just come in every day and do just that much less. And that's my right. That's what I need. But it's hard for me to get there. Like, it's taken me years to switch my brain, and I'm still not there yet. I'm still not consistently 3 to 4 days a week because mentally it's not fun for me.
So if we go back to your training, how far off was your training max to your competitive max, or was it the same?
I pretty much think all my PRs were on the platform, period.
How much of a gap do you think there was?
So, well, let's go back. So when I first did 1,003 in the gym, it was a little grindy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then at the meet, it was easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought I was going to go 1036, but I had to take the same weight twice.
Okay.
And so again, though, I never redlined it, Dave. That's why I stayed healthy at that time.
Yeah.
Once I started redlining it, that's when I started getting hurt.
Yeah. Well, even there, that's kind of a small percent, because I'll know some people that have a 10% variance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing they do in the gym will come close to 10% of what they do. So that'd be 900 for you.
Mine was pretty close.
Yeah.
And so I would train pretty heavy in the gym, but I was always a little heavier in the meets.
Mm-hmm.
I never did my third attempt bench press in the gym ever.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. Second, once. Opener, probably 3 times.
Yeah. So basically what you're telling me is you did then what you can't do now?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you think that is?
I think because it's hard to go backwards, man. I mean, just think of what we were doing for how many years to try to just push forward only.
Mm-hmm.
Forward only at any time, you know? And going backwards, it's not a loss. You have to rephrase it in your mind, but you know, you got to realize it's not personal about you. It's not about you at all. It's just natural.
Do you still think in your mind that you're going to make it back to a platform, or are you done?
Mentally, I'm comfortable with myself that I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm comfortable with anything I ever did. I'm comfortable with who I am as a person. You know, I'm more satisfied working on myself mentally than physically right now. But I'll never say never, because I'm competitive as shit, you know, and I like to have fun. You know, back when I felt healthy, even when I was like 400 pounds, I could box jump 40 inches or so. And, you know, if Owen wanted to challenge me to a foot race, I'd be down.
Yeah.
Now, today, I know I can't do that. But, you know, a few years ago, I would race anybody, even if I know I'd lose, and then I would talk shit because I knew I was an athlete and I was really competitive. And, you know, I'm still that way mentally in a lot of ways, but I'm just way more laid back. You know, I'm way more laid back, and, you know, I don't take it personally when I can't do what I want to do, you know?
Well, the tricky part is we'll tell lifters today, don't compare yourself to others, right? But you can get lost in this funk where you compare yourself to your old self.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the trick.
Yeah.
You know, so my advice is just don't do movements that you know how strong you used to be on.
That's a good point.
Like fuck them up some way so you just don't know. Like throw more chain on, a different grip.
Yeah, I did Hatfields for, you know, 7 weeks back in January and got to 700 with no pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. So here's another bad thing about me and how I am to myself. I got up to 700 on Hatfields, but I didn't give a shit because they were Hatfields.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's my own fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm my own enemy on that, you know? And so yeah, having different kinds of wins, I think, is pretty important too. Cause, I always tell my clients, I'm like, let's try to figure out how to win today. You know, it's not your job to do the workout. It's your job to win.
Yeah.
And if you come to me with an excuse of something, then I would say, well, how did you win? Okay. Now, a win could be making an adjustment and successfully completing the day. Whether it was what I wrote or not, I don't care. I care that you feel good.
Yeah.
Period. Over the numbers always. You know, I don't give a shit about the numbers. I care about you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the hard thing because, you know, people compare themselves to everybody all the time and it steals their joy, right? We always say that. And, you know, when you coach somebody and you're strong, I mean, they hired you because they want to be more like what you did, you know? And that's one of the hardest things is just to coach people to just love themselves, you know, no matter what happens. It's like, just be okay with yourself, and, you know, less of that mental turmoil will make this all be easier. You know,
when you were training for meets, obviously, I mean, the 1 year you had 3 meets in 1 year, but on average was it like 2 a year?
Probably about 2 a year. Yeah. When I first started, it was 4.
Yeah.
And then after that, it quickly decreased to 3 to 2.
All right. So then when it gets down to 2 and you just finish the meet, in your mind, you're kind of planning out how the next 6-8 months are going to look like, right?
Yeah. Well, and like I would say right now, I can still bench press well. And like I tried to bench for like 7 weeks a few months ago, and I got to 551 pretty quick. And so I know I can still bench 600 when I want to. And so, you know, if you told me like, hey, I want you to bench 600 again, when do you think you could do that? Like today, you know, it's, you know, October 26th. I think probably by June.
Yeah.
And I bet you I get close. I bet you I get within 10%.
Well, I think if you can lean into stuff like that, so that's what it is.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden your training has more purpose in your brain. Granted, we want purpose daily.
Yeah.
But now because that's there, you're not going to do as much stupid shit because you don't want to compromise what's out there. And it doesn't have to be that. It could be a 2-board press.
Again, it's that psychiatric suggestion where all you have to do is give that to your mind to put it there and be there and stay there. And but we don't always, especially when it's not something that we care that much about.
Yeah. I think at least what I found being a lifetime fucking meathead, which I've just come to the conclusion I will always be. Yeah. That I pick the movement that I want and whatever stretch goal I have for that. And then I have a year, to be able to train and peak for that. So I train just exactly the same way as it'd be a meet, but it's just one movement. That way it's a little bit easier. To
I like that idea. Do you pick one for different body parts or only for lower body?
For me, it's just it's a high box spider bar squat. So it's been that. And then each year I try to do it 10 pounds lighter and they say the same weight. But the training all changes because then after I accomplish it or don't, right, then I need to go into, say, off season mode, to let everything kind of heal, decompress, put muscle back on.
That's kind of the thing, though, that's funny about it, Dave, is even if you put all that into it and you fail, like the fact that you had purpose that whole time is way more important than the failure.
Well, it did more than just that squat because it kept all my recovery in control, it keeps the weight in control and it keeps my training in control because say every other week I'm going to train it. Yeah. Well, I need to be ready for that day. Yeah. So I can't do stupid shit before that day. Right. If there's a weak point, I have to bring that up. If there's not, fuck it. I ain't going to do anything for it. Yeah. Then I'm just going to kind of write it out, but it creates accountability over that time period. And then the closer it gets to whenever that peak is, the more important all these things become. And then it's because just doing like the regular bodybuilding shit, I tried that. It doesn't work.
I've wanted to try that lately and I can't do it.
Yeah, it doesn't. For me, it didn't scratch that itch. I have to have something that I can strain through. That's a key thing. I got to be able to strain and then not fuck me up. Yeah. Like even worst case scenario, I'm going to walk away from it and not break something. Yeah. So that was the hard part, like finding what movement can fit that definition.
I guess also that's been part of my problem too, is because I'm thinking about all the tools and equipment and I've got a fun gym. It's not wild like this, but it's pretty fun. And I can't like get into something that's not what I thought was so important, and the real important thing is me. And so I need to pick shit that is going to help me. And then, like you said, make that stuff more important so that I have something that ties things together day to day that creates wins over and over and then keeps me in check. Yeah. Ultimately.
Well, the older you get, to me, I mean, I'm biased here, a strength component is going to check all those other boxes because if your cardio is not in check, you're not going to recover. You're just not, so that's going to make the steps be there every single time. It's going to make the cardio be there and you'll know because the recovery will be compromised. Right. And then you're going to have other limitations like it's TRT. It's not the other shit. So there's another variable like, fuck, I can't rely on that.
Yeah. It's not going to happen anymore.
So there's all these other metrics and all those other metrics when played out that way end up increasing the cardiovascular, the recovery, the joint mobility, all those other things or it's not going to happen. And if there's checks along the way, right? It's not like just one big lift that's going to happen all there. That would drive me freaking crazy and probably wouldn't work either. So there's got to be hard training that kind of leads to that. But that was a godsend for me because otherwise it's just like, what am I doing? This is boring. I'm just doing it for my health or my mental health.
And one thing that's kind of disappointing is for me, like I'm not into social media anymore. As I get older, I just don't give a shit about it. And it's important to me because it's important to my gym. It's important to my community. It's important to my life in general in some ways, but God, I just don't want to post any of my shit anymore. It's not a 1,000-pound squat. Like I don't, and I never really posted to show off. It's just what I was doing. I was going to do it whether anybody saw it or not because I liked it. But nowadays I'm like, shit, man, I don't want to post anything. And like, I got this like time capsule of a thing, but I think it's also that sometimes, once you do that and compete and you're at that level, it's like, it's not that I don't value the other things. It's that they're just that less exciting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, that's something that I would like to get back into posting my training, because I don't keep a training log. I joked around that this is a really nice journal, and I'm left-handed. So I've never kept a training log, because in the first day I'll sweat all over the page and fuck it up. And, and so I can never keep a training log. So that's the only reason I use Instagram. Initially, it was just to post my one top set, because that's the only way I knew whatever I did in training ever in my life. I've never written anything down.
So you went off feel.
Yeah. Well, and I had like people telling me what to do sometimes, and typically I would do what they said for the MAID movement and then whatever else I wanted. They didn't have to worry about me on bench days, because I loved working upper body. I mean, one of the really popular coaches right now said the other day is like, biggest indicator of a big bench press is big bench press muscles. I had that shit covered. Because I loved doing it. I loved working shoulders, triceps, traps, pecs, everything that had to do with the upper body and big. I love that stuff. And I didn't need to be encouraged there, but I did need to be encouraged to do my squat accessories and my deadlift accessories, which didn't always happen, which is also a part of why I got hurt, because the other things I could have been doing could have been saving me a little bit, and they weren't, because I wasn't doing them. I was getting by doing what I wanted,
With those other things, if it's a client that you're working with now that is a lifter that's around the level that you're talking about, what would those other things be that you would have done?
So 10 minutes on the way in of just readiness and being prepared. Everything I had to do to prepare for my meet 2 years ago. Okay. All the little things I had to do, because every time I came in after I had been working with Stu and Andrew, I had stuff I had to work on, because if I didn't, I was going to be in pain. But back when I was competing a lot, like I didn't worry about pain, like not until it happened, but now it's here. It's not going anywhere. And so, I treat them how I had to treat myself when I came back, which is when you come in, you're going to do this no matter what day it is. And if you're still hurting, you're going to do it extra days. I know it's boring, but you're going to do it anyway. Before you leave, you're going to do this. And I can much more matter-of-factly say, do this or else, because I'm not going to punish you. You're punishing yourself. And I know which things to fight for, and I know which things not to fight for. Some things aren't important. I'm not going to major in the minors, but some of the things are very important.
I know it's specific I know it's specific to the individual, but what would some of those things be? So
like, for example, we shot some videos earlier about just putting on a band around your knees when you walk into the gym, so your glutes are being more active when you walk, because you're getting some proprioception, if you have a sore back, wear your belt more. Learn how to trust it and use it when you didn't think you necessarily needed it, because it helps. Use it as a positive tool, not as a Band-Aid. Use it as a proprioceptive tool for breathing. I would have focused on that stuff a lot more. I would have that's what I have to have them focus on more. Being efficient. Being efficient with your time.
Dive into that more. What do you mean?
Well, so like, for example, when I trained, I made sure I came in at times where I didn't have to be stressed out, and so I was able to take a little bit more time. But for my clients, this is a bigger picture topic. So in my gym, if somebody asks me, hey, what's your mission at the gym? It is to take these things that have been good for me in my life that I see value in, and provide them to other people and help them have it as a positive part of theirs. And it's so cool nowadays to be negative. It's so cool to need attention for negativity, because if somebody doesn't see greatness in themselves, then they know that they get attention for the other thing. Yeah. And they will, villainize training. They will villainize recovery. They will villainize the gym. They will villainize their coach. And they do it like it's funny or cool. It's not. For me, the way I like to see those things, instead of having them in this negative, overcast light that you use to self-deprecate yourself all the time in your gym experience, just make it positive. Instead of being the 40-year-old dad that says, I remember I used to do that, and then I had kids, Well, maybe just take a little bit more care and have kids and do what you want to, you know, or you can be a lazy sack of shit and it's over. But don't complain to me about it after that point, because you had a choice, just like I did, you know? And yeah.
So how's that work if you're on the floor and somebody's speaking like that? Are you reframing what they're saying?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, like when, you know, somebody complains about this or that or an injury and they look at me and they're like, oh shit, I can't be complaining to you. You have a permanently injured spine. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And that's, you know, like I rarely use the fact that I squatted 1,000 pounds as like defense in a statement, you know, because it doesn't give me any right to say anything about anything. But it's one of those times where I'll say, hey, you know, because of my experience, this is what I need you to do. And that pretty quickly helps. Yeah. You know,
it's still because it's, I mean, you're in a gym and it's more, how much of it's powerlifting focused?
I would say,
even if it's older people and younger people,
I would say probably like 70%.
So 70% of it. So the culture can be determined and shattered very quickly based upon, you know, the attitudes that people are going to have while they're in there.
Right.
Right. So how do you keep that in check?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, like our community, and I think most fitness communities, like when they're all together, it's pretty positive. Now, individually, like they like that negative attention. But I think typically in general, it's a positive thing. You know, like one of our Olympic weightlifters posted last night a video of her squatting, you know, it's like 375 pounds. She's a strong girl. And she was posting it and she was posting about her day. And then she put a little blurb at the top because I walked through the back of the video and just like yelled at her while she was working hard and just like, come on. And she was like, they're so present and encouraging. Well, when I said that, I wasn't trying to be present and encouraging. I was being myself. And I think that it starts there. It starts at the top. And that's why we host meets at our gym in every sport that we support, because we want to be the example of that. We want to be the example of how you treat your athletes. We want to be the example of how you treat the gym. We want to be the example of what we all want that we never had growing up. Yeah. You know, and it starts with us. It starts with being positive with everybody around you. You know, it starts with, you know, helping people not learn from your mistakes before they make them. You know, now it's great for them to make some of your mistakes, but if you can keep them from some of the other ones, then that's what your value is to them, you know?
Sometimes they have to make the mistakes to learn though, too.
That's the only way I learned. Yeah. You know?
Well, that becomes a tricky thing because you can kind of see where this is going. Yeah. And you got to determine, do you let this go this way?
I had a good example of that. This is a small one. This is an easy one. So one of those 3 guys that squatted 200 at the beginning of the summer. So I told them that they would squat 300 by the end of the year. I said they could. I don't honey dick anybody, but I told him, I said, hey, you did 275 in August, you might get 300 because they still got noob gains. Yeah, yeah. I said, you might get 300 by the new year. Okay. Now, one guy squats 280 for 2 on SSB. The other guy squats 286 for 2 on the straight bar, on squat bar. And while we were spotting them, I could tell. We always use side spots. We don't use back spots. If we're going to do 3, we'll use a back spot, but always side. And so also I can see their depth better when I'm side spotting. When you're back spotting and they ask you how their depth was. Yeah, yeah. How many times have you been asked how depth was from the back?
Way too many.
And you're like, fucking no, dude. I know as well as you did.
Yeah, you're trying to look at the bar path and guess.
Look at the video. Don't talk to me about this. Yeah. And so he was a little high. And most lifters don't know that when you squat a little high, it's because your body gets a fear signal and it stops and it shuts your muscles down, just like a back spasm. A spasm is caused by a traumatic event, and then your brain shuts that area down because it affected a nerve, right? So, you know, same thing when you're squatting. A lot of times people stop moving and then come up because they're scared, right? And that's interesting to me. And so I noticed that in his squat, it was probably at parallel. And I'm a dick about depth because I squatted 1,003 to, you know, absolute depth in my opinion. And so I will always have a high standard for that. There's just no excuse for it in our sport, outside of multiply, in my opinion, to hit below parallel. Right. And so for me, I noticed it, but I didn't say anything because his win at that moment was way more important than that loss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's funny because we're high-fiving, we're having a good time, and then I'm kicking their ass on accessories, right? And we're like, at this point, we're like on the bike, they're on the assault bike doing Tabata to finish their workout and then get out the door. And he's in between rounds and he looks at me and he goes, hey, was that last set deep enough? And I said, no, it wasn't. I said, no, Steven, it wasn't. And I said, but honestly, let me tell you, that win of you doing that weight that close to depth was way more important than me shitting on it that moment. So you learned way more from getting to enjoy that. Because now we get to have this conversation that we were going to have next week.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, next week, you're going to squat 300. Okay. And I'm going to have the best spotters in the room on you. We're going to be in the elite mono. And you're not going to cut that one short because you don't want to have this talk again.
Yeah.
And he goes, I understand. I'll take it to depth.
Yeah, that works.
That's perfect.
Yeah, we're going to take a bathroom break real quick. And I'm going to come back. First thing I'm going to jump on is the depth and the judging, because that will be a good conversation.
I would love it.
One of the ways that you can support the podcast is by purchasing or picking up our limited edition apparel. The shirt that I have on right now is one of the only shirts that we brought back for a second time. Normally we'll never do that, but the only reason we brought this one back for a second time is it sold out within 6 hours. So we brought this one back. We also got a second one that we just dropped. It's our, I guess, just Halloween edition shirt. Go to EliteFTS.com or go to the link in the description. This really does help us out because this directly supports the Table Talk podcast. Thank you guys. Enjoy the show. All right, so we're back. So we're going to pivot. Instead of talking about depth right now, we're going to talk about drugs because that's what we were talking about. So we have the cigar. So you were saying that with alcohol, you were going through how much?
So I was drinking by myself. And I wasn't making it a daytime thing. It was a nighttime thing after everybody went to bed. I've always been a night owl. And even after I trained, and it was about a handle of wild turkey a week. And it wasn't good for me. It was bad for my body weight. It was bad for my heart health. It was bad for everything. And I was scared. At the time, I was really stressed out about work and I was going into this gym thing from what I had already known. And I was successful at that. And I had this pain in my stomach and I thought maybe my liver had a problem or something. And I was very scared. That's why we don't want to go to the doctor because they're going to tell us what's wrong. And I don't want to know. Yeah. I'm still a little bit that way, to a point. And so I trusted a friend to look at it and they were able to tell me I was okay. And I was, I always tell people, when you're fat and you want to lose weight, get scared. Everybody that wants to make progress in their weight class or in their weight that's been fat their whole life, you just have to get scared enough to make action or be determined enough or whatever. You have to have some purpose that overcomes your anxiety of whatever is tying you onto that thing. And so I just stopped buying booze. I was literally at the Mayweather-McGregor fight at a friend's house. And I don't really like drinking beer because it just makes me feel full. And I'm so big that I have to have a lot of drinks. And why would I drink that not to feel something, Just didn't make a point to me. I don't love the flavor enough to just enjoy it, And so we're sitting there and I'm having a couple beers and then somebody says, hey, we just got back from Colorado, and this is probably 6 years ago. And, marijuana wasn't legal in our area or anything. And he said, hey, I just got back from Colorado. Do you want to smoke some weed? And I had been listening to Rogan's podcast for a while, and I'm getting more comfortable over and over with this idea that, well, that's a natural thing. Alcohol kills all these people. My dad worked in law enforcement my whole life. And he said, I've never had a problem with somebody that was high, not on weed. And I was thinking about it. I was like, that's probably better for me. And I went out into that garage with those guys and I had 2 hits off a 1-hitter. And I was good the whole night. I had 2 beers the whole night. I enjoyed the fights. I had a great time. And I was like, there's something to this. And it's been a part of my life since. I enjoy it.
So it didn't put you in a state where you thought you were stuck the rest of your life?
No. So a lot of people that don't like marijuana, they say, hey, it gives me anxiety. And if they ask me about it, I go, I do like it because it helps me deal with my anxiety, And sometimes when I smoke, I still get that in my head where I'm like, man, I'm starting to worry about this, this, and this. And I might even write it down. Or I'll just say to myself, when we're talking about psychiatric suggestions, I'll say to myself, hey, if this is a problem in the morning when I'm sober, I'll deal with it. But right now I'm cool. And I think it's helped me be at peace, to be honest with you. You know, not as much as mushrooms.
Yeah. So go into that.
So good friend of mine, Matt Vincent, we brought up earlier, multiple time Highland Games champion. I was going through a very rough time, and I just moved out and just trying to figure out what this new lifestyle is and what our life is going to be like now. And if I'm going to be a good person or a good dad or a good ex or any of that. Like, I was really worried about the future. You know, there's such a change that it's not quick, you know, and it's a lot to get used to. It's a lot to make normal again. And just kind of like a little messiah, you know, Matt gave me a text one day and he said, "Hey, I'm going to be home. And I feel like you need to have an experience. You want to come out and hang out in St. Louis?" And I said, yeah. And first time trying mushrooms, I did a heroic dose of 5 grams, which it didn't affect me as much as him. Because this is my story of my life is, you know, if I want to get drunk, I got to drink a lot. If I want to get high, I got to get into it, you know? And it's also cool because it lets me like relax with it a little bit more because I know it's not going to affect me. I'm not going to go hard in the pain all the time. But that 5 grams, man, we did some breath work and we like went into my subconsciousness, so to speak, like in our minds, you know, and like peeled back the layers of it and found my color inside.
How are you conscious enough to do that if you're that fucked up?
Well, so he was very experienced. He was being my Sherpa, so to speak, right? He was like guiding me through the process. And, you know, there was one point where we had gotten to like the peak of it and we had really done some work and done a lot of breathing exercises. And then he's like, "Hey man, I think we should go outside." And, it was at the end of October at the time, like probably right around now, 2 years ago. And or I guess 3 years ago, it was 2020. And he goes, "Hey, let's go outside." And I go, "Well, my shoes are upstairs." And he's like, "I don't think we're going to need them." It's like 50 degrees outside or less, maybe 45. And we just walked out barefoot and we were like hugging and crying in the street lights and like just experiencing all these things that usually we don't get to because we don't break down the fourth wall in ourselves a lot, you know? And, man, it just taught me a lot about myself and made me more comfortable with myself and made me more comfortable with anxiety. And, you know, I found ways to ground, you know, that help in those moments and in real life. And, you know, any advice I have for people who are wanting to try any of this stuff is be with somebody experienced, start small, just like anything else, like we talk about in weightlifting. And I know I didn't start small, but I started with somebody super experienced. So I was ready for that. And needed that at the time, but it would have still been cool if it was less. And microdosing is fantastic. I'd recommend that for you for sure. You know, having, you know, less than, you know, 0.01 gram, you know, like just a small amount, like just taking and seeing what that does. Try it for a week, you know, if you like it, great. If you don't, move on. It's been really good for me. It's been life-changing.
How so?
That first experience. So if you take a lot, it's 6 hours, you know, lower amounts, you might feel like it affects you for less time, but you know, a few hours at least. And so, that's 6 hours. You go through a lot. It's a roller coaster. It's like you go up, 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 up. Whoa. And it can either be great or hard at that time too. It can go one or two ways, really. And you can learn from both of them if you're open to it, you know? But sometimes I stay away from it because I'm not ready for a bad one, you know, and I know that about myself. And so maybe that means I need it, you know, I don't know. What's it telling me, you know? And so then after you're done, you have a come down, okay? And on this come down, you feel like you've never known yourself better and been so sure of yourself in your whole entire life. And you know so many truths about yourself in that moment. You're so humble to yourself. It feels incredible. So it's worth that experience for the come down, you know? And I would say that microdosing feels a little bit like the tail end of a come down, you know, where it's just a little easy breezy, like stuff that normally you're afraid to, you know, jump into. It's just, well, let's just do it, you know, let's get it on, you know. I'm not interested in the stress of this. I'm interested in getting it done, you know. And man, it changed my life. And then I was on my way home that day after that whole experience, you know. And I was on my way home and Matt sent me a text and it said, "Hey, just remember the medicine's still working." And it's been 3 years and it still is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever happened that day, that 6 hours felt like 6 months of therapy, and it hasn't gone away. Just like the 14 months of real therapy I did impacts me day to day. So did that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's valuable, man. I think it's important. I think that, you know, I made a post yesterday on my Instagram, and it said, you know, we need to be doing marijuana and mushrooms at house parties, not alcohol. Alcohol is boomer technology.
Oh God, that's funny.
Boomer technology.
Yeah.
Well, like, how are we convincing ourselves that it's still okay to drink alcohol like we do? It's not.
I've never been a big drinker, but basically what you're saying is one of them is kind of avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
Like the alcohol is a way to avoid it,
Mm-hmm.
where the other one's leaning into it.
I think that's probably right. I think that alcohol you black out for. The other things you're more present for. Now, you could argue marijuana makes you feel more distant sometimes.
Yeah.
But it depends on how you're using it or when you're using it. You know, for me, it's more like a chill out at the end of the night kind of thing, mostly. Just like somebody sits down with a glass of scotch, but it's no calories. And then everybody always likes to say, yeah, but when I get high, I have to eat. And I go, okay, so when have you not been fucked up drinking and gone through a drive-through?
Yeah.
Or ordered a pizza? You know, like, also when I drink, it's like 1,500 calories minimum just for the drinks.
Yeah.
You know, and that's with Diet Coke.
Yeah.
So I just don't get that argument at all. And you're not punishing your liver the whole time.
I'm more interested in the self introspection,
Mhm.
right? Because I've never gone through a divorce, but it was very close once.
Yeah.
And it's hell.
Mhm.
I mean, there's I can't explain anything that's more hell
Sure.
than that, right?
Yeah.
And the only way it got better is when I figured out who I was.
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of a rough. It's a rough journey to be able to figure that out.
I think my ex knows who she is. And at the time I changed a lot. She's the exact same as when I met her. And I was very different and had gone through a lot with myself. And it helped me know myself better. And because I feel like for a while I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was trying to figure out who that was. And, you know, that's why I didn't really go through that mental turmoil early on, because I don't think I really had that crisis at all,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But as you get older, things change sometimes, you know, and you can either grow together or not, you know, and I'm just really lucky. My ex is a great person.
Yeah.
And we got through that together. We counseled together, and we still work daily together on our children.
Mhm.
And keeping things so important that are important, you know, and having a good heart for each other and caring about each other. You know, so yeah, it was really tough, and it could have been harder, you know, it could have been harder, but we worked really, really hard to not make it that way,
Mhm.
honestly.
So it was this and the therapy.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say the takeaways were?
So I said earlier, my mission statement in therapy was to learn more about myself so I know more about what I want and need, you know? And I think that's been accomplished. You know, I think I have learned to be more comfortable with myself. I have less anxieties day to day. The anxieties I do deal with, I know more about how to deal with, and I'm more comfortable dealing with them. When I get new ones, I know more about it, you know? I've also learned how to, you know, manage my relationships too. You know, my relationship with my parents is really good right now because we've had some really honest conversations about how we talk to each other and what's acceptable in our lives and what's not. Right.
Mhm.
And I just don't have any room in my life for relationships that aren't good for me anymore, you know? And, you know, it taught me that. It taught me a lot about it. And it taught me a lot about what that looks like and how to think about it and how to learn from my therapist, you know, and the things that I needed to learn about myself and that I continually will have to work on. Like, I haven't been to therapy since February. I went for 14 months and then I stopped in February, and I absolutely will go back, but I'm still working on it every single day, the same as I was in February,
Mhm.
you know? So have you ever heard the term the work?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to talk about it, but the term the work. So I have a hard time having a personal relationship with anybody who hasn't started the work.
Mhm.
And that means reading about it or going to therapy. Look, you don't have to go to therapy. You can do it on your own. In my opinion, there's like 3 ways to move through this. One is to read and be your own advocate and to start to develop yourself mentally, do self-help, whatever. Now, at that point, you're a little bit, it's like somebody who coaches himself in powerlifting from reading Muscle and Fitness.
Mhm.
You can get a lot done, but it's a little slower because you don't have quite the access point. The second one is therapy, and it's faster and it's guided, and you have a teacher the whole time. And, you know, there's good and bad ones, but at least you're in the work, you know? And then the third one is psychedelics, you know, and drugs. And I don't know if it's always quite as pointed of a gun as therapy, but it definitely is buckshot.
Yeah.
You know, and it covers a lot of ground fast by breaking down that fourth wall, in my opinion. So those are the three ways. Now, anybody who's listening or watching this, take your phone out and look up the 4 agreements. Okay. So when I first started to go into this, right around when I tried mushrooms and before I had started therapy on my own, but after we had done couples therapy, one of my really good friends that has always had the best heart, Emily, she gave me the 4 agreements, a little book. And I'm Dave, I don't read. If I want to learn something, I'll go to somebody and learn it. You know, that was the best thing Being Strong ever gave me was access to Stu McGill and Darren Horshig and to you, you know, that's the coolest thing that ever happened from Being Strong. And people can read, you know, go get the 4 agreements. And even if you just Google what it is and you see what they are, and I have clients that have put it as their phone background because they've had these stressful relationships with their mom or their daughter or their husband or whoever. And when they go through one of those daily, aside from the therapy they already do, they'll just read those, you know, and I'll probably butcher them, but the first one is, you know, be true to your word, you know. The fourth one is always try your best. Okay. But the second and third ones are the ones that hurt. Okay. The second and third ones are never have any expectations and never take anything personally. Ever. Because people are never thinking about you. They're always thinking about themselves. So taking anything personally, all you're doing is punishing yourself for yourself based on what you think you know about something you don't know about. Yeah. Those are so important, man. Like those 2 middle of the 4 agreements just change everything. They change everything. How many times can you solve something in your brain just using those 2 things? A lot. I mean, a fucking lot. Like every time you're upset, almost. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, at least in interactions with other people. You know, and honestly, one of the hardest parts about being a gym owner is taking things personally. And anymore, like sometimes I'm too cold because I don't take things personally anymore. And I'm like, no, it's cool. You're leaving. See ya. You know, I'm going to focus on everybody that's here. And I really appreciate our time together, but bye. I don't want to have a half an hour appointment about why you're no longer going to be here. Yeah. You know, just go. Yeah. I love you. You know, I still do. You're welcome tomorrow, you know, come back. And then you're right back in that circle, you know? But it took me a long time, man. I'm a sensitive guy and it took me so long not to take things personally in that space, but that also helped me become better at my relationships and personal relationships. And I still have a ton of patience to gain and it's not over ever. Well, at the very least though, it will help you vet at least 80% of the shit out that you shouldn't be pissed off about anyhow. Like comments on Instagram, like really? I'm hurting my own feelings, Dave. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, if you really got something to say, type it, screenshot it, send it to your best friend that understands and never send that shit. Yeah. You know, also, if something doesn't bring you joy, mute it, block it, get rid of it. If they take it personally, cool. Okay. You know, I don't care. If somebody unfollows me, cool. Yeah. They have apps out there where you can learn about who unfollows you. I've had somebody message me like, hey, did you block me? And I'm like, yeah, your stuff doesn't make me feel good. So that's like, why would they care? You know, is this one of those? I don't. Yeah. Not anymore. You know? Yeah. I used to a lot, but it's wasted. But that's something that there's no, this is what I've never understood with things like that. There's no control over that. No. Like it's there could be people that will comment on this conversation. I don't know them. No. Like if I don't know them, like there could be people talking about you right now in a different gym that we're completely unaware of. Obviously you don't give a shit about it. No, not at all. You know, so if it's a random comment by an avatar, that's no different. Yeah, I've had just trying to wrap my head around why people get so butthurt about it. Yeah. You know, when it's not real. Right. It's not like what you see there it's not real life. Man, I had some very vivid experiences of just like Instagram not being real, you know? And I think when you go through some pretty deep personal things and you know you can't share them, like, 'cause it's not good for you, then I think that's where you really start to learn how not real it is just on your own experience, and just apply that to everybody else and just know that they're the same.
Well, just look at your real life.
Yeah.
And that's not being mirrored, on there.
But also, don't be fake. Don't be fake. Be authentic. Because, I mean, you can be fake. It's just not going to be my friend, But we're looking for that authenticity. We're looking for people who who they are when you see them, Yeah, that's what we want. People who are comfortable with themselves because they make you more comfortable to be around them,
So
Makes
how would
open
you,
up.
how
Your
would
conversations
you,
are better.
How would you explain all this to your 25-year-old self?
Shit, dude. So, well, hey, let me get deeper. I'll go deeper. So my shadow self is 12. Okay. Right before I started working out, like the year before, or the year of. That's the weakest version of me, And when we're doing EMDR therapy, which is just to explain very quickly, EMDR therapy is, and I'm going to butcher this too, but your eyes naturally go back and forth in your head. And it's taking a light or a buzzer with your eyes closed and giving you that back and forth. And when that happens, it unlocks something in your brain where you're able to kind of experience something different. So it's very good therapy for people with PTSD. Okay. It's like very, very proven to be one of the most effective PTSD helps. For some people, it's too realistic. But for most people, they're able to like distance themselves from what happened and experience it like it's a video game more than you're there. Okay. So one of the most valuable exercises I ever did was I was not feeling good about me, and I'm trying to learn how to feel good about me. And my therapist had me give my 12-year-old self a tour of my life. That was impactful, man. Like the weakest version of you, seeing you now and what happened in between and how we got here, man, the perspective was different,
So that still doesn't answer how you would explain all this to a 25-year-old. Or to your 25-year-old self.
Well, to my 25-year-old self, I don't think I had encountered all these things yet.
Yeah.
I think I was still trying to get to this point, But there are things I teach my 11-year-old now that I'm going through at 37, 38, 39, And
such as?
For example, like he's playing baseball, And I'm relating real life to baseball for him, just like I do weightlifting to real life, for us and for our clients and people around us, And so, in baseball, like kids are striking out and crying. That's not okay. Don't cry about that. It's okay to be emotional, but building emotional maturity can start there, because if we don't start it there, then they're going to be very emotionally immature 26-year-olds, And, so that's what I would probably try to impart into my 25-year-old self is what I'm trying to do with my 11-year-old self, my real kids, my 11 and my 8-year-old, And like my 8-year-old the other day got in trouble for lying, And we're all sophomores, so this will be a funny story. So my 8-year-old is in the bathroom at school, and they're not looking at each other under the stalls, they're just looking under the stalls, And one of the kids' feet were backwards, and he goes, "He's taking a dump." And then the teacher asked him about it, and he lied because, that's what a lot of people do in that situation. But what we're trying to tell him is like, don't lie about anything, especially that. That's not a big deal because that's something I would do now. To one of my, I'd do that to a friend. If a friend was visiting here with me, I'd take a picture and be like, "Look, Sean's taking a shit at EliteFTS." So but don't lie about it. Don't lie about it. Just do your best, be yourself. And so that's probably what I would give myself. When I was younger, is what I'm trying to give those kids now.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that you're working on with your kids?
Emotional maturity, ego, I was always pretty insecure, I think, until a certain time period. And I think ego is just you trying to be comfortable with you, right? And but showing it in a way that's probably not as effective. So this came up in baseball again, with my 11-year-old. He's a good player. He's really talented, and he's really smart. And sometimes it makes him a little uncoachable by his teachers in school. When he's a mathematical kid, he's got a mathematical brain, and I don't. And So his teachers are trying to get him to do reading and writing more successfully. The thing that kept him out of the gifted program for like 3 years was the creative writing, and everything else he's insane on. He's in 5th grade and he goes to 6th grade for math, that kind of thing. So sometimes he thinks he's so smart that he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, always. And that gives him an ego. And so he was guest playing for this team. And the first night he was playing, first or catcher or whatever. And they beat the team. They were doing great and they're tied or whatever. And so he thought he was the savior to this team that wants him to play, So the next day he gets to pitch and he gets on the mound and his first pitch is a pitch he's never thrown before. And I can't, as his dad, I don't get to be a part of this, I don't coach my kids hardly ever. And I'm also a pretty chill, sideline parent, and I don't give the coaches too much shit unless they deserve it. And that's happened too. But I've only gotten thrown out of one game at this point, and I was defending a coach who was getting kicked out that didn't do anything wrong. So I used the F word, so they didn't like that. So, he starts throwing this pitch and the coach can't get him to not do it. I can't get him to not do it. And he gets 8 runs put up on him and they lose the game and he's very upset. And, in my opinion, his ego came to that game. He thought he was going to be invincible because he's the smartest guy in the room. And then he helped his team lose. And he was their enemy that day because he was all about himself. Right. And so to try to teach an 11-year-old, that's not easy. And so we had to talk about it nice and slow, and so we were like, hey, here's what happens. So he likes that show Young Sheldon, where the kid's real smart. And oftentimes in Young Sheldon, the adults are annoyed by him. And I said, hey, you know how this is your favorite show and he's super annoying? Sometimes you do that. Okay. And it's not a bad thing about you. Okay. It's the way your brain works and the way you think about yourself and how smart you are is sometimes it works against you because you take it too far. Okay. And the best thing you could learn is self-awareness of that. And most people are never self-aware, let alone at 11, and he's still not. It takes time. I'm working on it every day. It's never over. Right. Not this. And so I said, here, what would happen? Here's how it would look if you got better at this. Coach comes out to the mound and says, hey, your dad said that you usually don't pitch from there. If you responded, oh, shit, you're right. Probably not say shit, but oh, you're right. I just thought it was a good idea to try that because I thought it might be effective and I'm sorry. If it wasn't, then I'll just do it the way that I do it. That would be self-aware. You can't do that at 11, but you can talk about it. Yeah. And that's why he's not a villain in this. He's being encouraged, and being self-aware is huge, and same thing to my 8-year-old when he lied. If he was more self-aware and he knew that was just a thing, you don't have to lie about dumb little shit like that, just tell the truth, man, about everything. And that's self-aware. And so that was the next thing that we worked on. It's one of the big lessons,
I can take that self-awareness and actually take it back to the topic we were going to talk about after we had our break, which would be squat depth, right? Which as you stated earlier, you're a prick about.
Yeah, so, man. If babies can hit perfect depth, then why can't we continue that? That's something that's learned. It's not something about who you are, and I think that the gym community that I grew up in, as an adult has so many really good people in it. All the guys that brought me in when I was new and, they had a good culture and I don't even know if they knew it. It started with Al Caslow. Yeah. Those guys all trained with Al Caslow. Now, I never really got to. When I got there, I was like, who's this little guy? And because he was just wearing Romaleos and he was squatting raw. He was doing 4-something, just for sets of 8. I mean, he still, was a monster, but I just didn't know, and because Al could do it when he wanted to, that. Al can do whatever he wants. He's a brilliant lifter.
He was a freak.
He's a total freak and a good dude and a good dad, I think. And so Al set that culture before I ever got there. And I was never really a part of it with Al, but then it moved into us. And I learned enough from those guys that I was never going to do it any other way because they taught me, you know? And then when I learned I could be really good at it, and people always talk about haters and people being negative, and, you know, I don't see a whole lot of people with amazing character that get shit on all the time. You know, think about it. You know, if you don't want people to talk shit on your squat, do it better.
Yeah.
You know, I never got shit on for my squat because everybody knew that I dunked it. And if people just did that, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah. Well, there's different sides to this story, which we were talking about a little bit during the break, where while I was still competing, if it would slowly kind of get a little lax, and then there would be, and it sucked, there would be a correction, right? So, and it would say one of the nationals just would get blasted, like Herb Glossbrenner would write it up and just blast the fact that all squats were high or whatever it was. And then the next year, you know, if you weren't aware, there was an overcorrection, which sucked. Like a correction's okay, but the overcorrection sucked.
That's why I want consistency, Dave.
Yeah.
Because I don't love these swings.
Yeah.
As a coach, as a gym owner, as a meet director, if they know what to expect, they'll just do it.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen that be a case in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, a very long time. Where the point I was going to get to is when you, and it's going to be different with multiply and raw, which we can talk about that, where if it's a money meet, you know, there's been 5 occasions I can think of just right off the top of my head where, you know, you're watching the squats, right? Because you got a lifter in 4th flight or whatever it's going to be. So you're trying to get a gauge, you know, where this is going to be. And then there's a conversation that's to be had, you know, and it's based upon what I'm seeing. I can call you here because that's where everything else is. Or I can call you where I think it should be. What would you rather do? And now there's money on the line.
So that's tough in raw because it's too fast to do that. You can't call them. I mean, you can, but not if they're good in raw. You know? It's just so much more clear in multiply. And you're as a handler or a coach, your communication with the official, you know, can be a little bit better in multiply. Because I can tap you or I can tell you, or you know what I'm saying? It's just a lot easier in my opinion. And that way. But
I've never had anybody tell me, put it where it needs to be. Now, the flip side of that is anybody that I would be helping or working with training wise, they have the capacity to go where it would have to go, worst case scenario, to be able to pivot. And that happened to one of the guys I mentor at the Vegas WRPF. I think he was the only guy in gear, but he had the capacity to be able to go because it was different, and that some don't. And that's a problem.
All the guys now at WRPF nationals, all the guys that were in gear did beautifully. They did great. And, you know, we handled it well. They had the right equipment. They had the right spotters. I jumped in for a couple 3-man handoffs, you know, because I know what I'm doing, you know? And, you know, I think that it's so hard when it moves like that. If it's consistent and they know what to expect, it's better. Now there's been this string of like pro level meets that had a lot of money where the standards weren't great. You know? But
you see how that plays into if you're the lifter and then you're coaching the lifter, there's a really awkward spot that you're in.
Well, it's best if it's not there.
100%.
You know?
I agree 100%.
And sometimes they know the vibe before they come in. Like when I hosted a couple pro meets, they knew that we were going to be how I am, which is.
Do you think people avoid or lean into that now?
Both. People avoid it if they're cowards, and they lean into it if they're not. Now, if enough people are doing it, the cowards will come along to be a part of the cool crowd. You know? But key. I have never seen it where somebody has not conformed to the standard when they had to. So just do it all the time, dipshit. You know, that's what pisses me off about it. And so that's why federations are important, because I think consistency is important. And so I think the more of us are doing the same thing, the better off everybody is. Year
over year too.
And then so like in my gym, I would say that because of the guys that came before me and taught everybody how to do it, telling somebody their squat is high is no different than telling somebody they have a booger. And you're thankful that they told you so you don't look fucking stupid. So I think that's the best kind of culture to have. You know?
No, like I said, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
It just gets a little weird.
Yeah.
It meets, because if that standard isn't held, and some meets will radically change.
Yeah.
The same, all other aspects the same from one year to the next, to the next, to the next.
I agree. And I think that it's our job to, as leaders in the community, to try to not have that be the case anymore,
So you put on a lot of meat. So how do you control that with the meats that you put on?
So one is the federation that you're a part of, and that, that affects it quite a bit, but you've even seen in different federations regionally, things can be very different,
Well, let's assume anything that happens at the small little gym level, it's a feeder to get to a better meet, right? Yeah. So that's going to be a clusterfuck.
So we've always felt that way about our meets locally, is that if somebody does our meet and then they go to nationals, they're not going to be shocked, because a lot of people are.
Yeah, but that would be a rare exception.
Yes. And so, well, somebody has to do that. Somebody has to have that standard. I was talking to my buddy Dave Osborne, who's one of the greatest people in powerlifting, and he has always been such a good person to me, and really a cheerleader for me in some ways when I didn't always feel that way about myself. And he said, hey, you're a pioneer for having warm-up equipment that matches the platform equipment. We're having a mono meet in December 9th, and we have 4 mono lifts. Nobody has 4 monoliths. Some people, Dirty Gym has, 3 or 4. Yeah. We have 4 monoliths. So we have 3 in the warm up room. And I think if you're going to have a mono on your platform, you have to have 3 in the warm up room. That's how I deal it. And then if we have combo racks, we have 4, for one platform, and all the federations say you have to have a minimum of 2 places to warm up, but we have 4, and when it's a mono, we have 3. And if we want to have a 4th, we have mono hooks, the standardization and calibrated weights, like we were part of that group, when that happened, we were one of the groups of meet directors that was like, hell yeah, let's do that, and I think that federations matter in that way. I think that standards matter, and nobody's going to rise to a low expectation. So we're not the best at it, but we're up there, and we're going to continue to try to be. So,
how many meets a year have you been putting on?
Anywhere from, I would say, back when I didn't own the gym, it was probably 2 a year. And then when I owned the gym, it moved to like 4 to 8.
That would explain all the mushrooms.
Yeah, it's stress. Yeah. You got to do what you got to do to survive. And also, though, even more than like making money off of meets, because meets are cool for money. They're like a little bit of a bonus. But we put a lot into them, honestly. So we're not looking at them from that perspective. It's more a part of our business, and we feel like if we're going to be a competitor's gym and have competitors and competitors' equipment, then we should also support all those people and have their sports in our gym as like the best example of that sport in our region, at least, And so that's how we do that. That's how we see that. That's how we act. That's how we carry ourselves. And that's how we go about hosting events. So at our gym specifically, I think this next calendar year, because we've gone through some federational changes, is we'll probably have 4 meets in our gym that are powerlifting meets, 1 untested, 3 tested, 1 of them USAPL. And the other 3 WRPF. And then I will host meets at a few other gyms too that aren't quite equipped to host their own at the moment, or they need a little help, or they just don't give a shit to do it. Like they want me to come do it. And that helps build the region a little bit. So, I go up to Omaha and to Wichita a little bit, and to Salina and Manhattan outside of Kansas City to help out with meets. And then we also do Special Olympics meets too. So we do 1 of those at our gym, and then I do the state championships because they didn't know that it wasn't up to standard with what we do, and those athletes, if anybody fucking deserves that, it's them. Yeah. And so we've tried to help develop that a little bit, and so we do 1 of those, and then the state meet I personally do, and then we also do a Olympic weightlifting meet, because we have a great Olympic weightlifting population, and my co-owner Ethan is an exquisite weightlifter. And then we also, now we haven't done a strongman in a while, and the problem is with strongman is it's so not standardized in some ways that it's a little bit more artistic than I want to be sometimes. And creativity is tough in something where you can be very creative. Yeah. In powerlifting you got some parameters, and it's pretty And you can be creative inside that, but it's safe.
Yeah.
And but strongman's another animal, so we're gonna host the Kansas Strongest Man this year and try to make it a really fun show. And so now we're representing all the events that our gym says that we're about. You know.
Do you still do online coaching now? All right. So how does, obviously there's a big difference between that and in person. How have you bridged that gap?
Yeah, so as a coach, I'm pretty laid back, and sometimes probably too laid back, but I think I work with the kind of people that I gel with really well, and that we have good conversations when we talk. And I think that I'm not for an athlete that wants to major in the minors. I'm not going to have a 25 paragraph conversation about something we can talk about in 30 seconds. It's not how I want to spend my time. Okay. I coach 30 to 35 lifters, and then I make a little bit of money owning the gym, but I have to do both to make ends meet. Right. My ideal coaching load's probably about 25 lifters. You know, I actually love in-person coaching. You know, it gives me a lot of purpose. You know, every single one of those in-person people ends up crying at some point and talking and having a deeper relationship than we probably would if we didn't have that contact. And I'm open to that with my online clients too. It's just, I don't know if they always feel like opening up. And, you know, maybe that's something I need to change in me, where I can get that experience with them too. I just think it's harder. That's why I drove 10 hours today, because this is better. Oh, yeah. You know, by far. How
does your programming layout? So outside of the nuance shit, you know, even outside the technical stuff. So what does the program look like if they're going to be training for a meet?
Yeah. So pretty vanilla for me on that kind of shit, because I think you can stay pretty simple and yield great results. The more simple the main work is, the better. And then you can get creative outside of that. You know, sometimes some of that is for them to grow, and then they can also be entertained by it too. But I'm not very worried about that with the powerlifting movements, because I don't think we should get it twisted.
Yeah. So how do you define simple?
Starting with threes.
Yeah.
Building volume over 6 to 8 to 10 week periods of time, however long they have before they need to go into something else.
Yeah.
You know, typical, I never do like 10 weeks. It's more like 20, 30, 40 weeks. I like to let that cycle breathe so they never have to redline too hard at one time. So I like to slowly build volume and then go into a strength block and build strength, and then lower the volume again and increase the intensity again and taper and peak. How long that takes or how aggressive that is depends on the athlete a little bit. If they're a more mature athlete, then they're going to have a period where I probably use chains on their squat and bench.
How far are you going to peel back the triples if you're starting that far out?
So it really depends on the athlete and the situation. But I would say the last time somebody does a triple before a meet, for most athletes that I work with, is probably going to be about 4 weeks to 5 weeks.
Yeah, I get that. But
maybe more like 6.
What I'm asking is if it's weight from, say, they're 20 weeks out and they're starting with triples,
right?
You know, how far back are you regressing?
So it's gonna be on our PE scale.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna base it off of how the athlete feels, and the further out we are, the more volume we're gonna do. So it'll also be more AMRAP heavy as well. Okay. Because I think we find out a lot in those times too, especially in bench press.
Yeah. So when you're talking volume, how many triples are you talking about?
So typically we're going to be somewhere in between, when we're building volume, I like to be in between, 16 and 24 reps, even going up into the 30s. But then once we get into strength, we're 15 or less. So usually 4 sets to 5 sets. If we're doing a top set and a back off for that athlete, then usually it's pretty stressful at the top end instead of more of an 8 the whole way. We may go from a 9 to a 7. And then we have to back off a little more. So then that total work in the working sets is more like 4 sets.
So how do you determine if you have that AMRAP in there? Is that with the same weight or are you dropping a percentage?
Depends at that point. So like, let's say they're at 85% for a triple, and maybe an AMRAP is not so good for that athlete, and we need to go down to 70% for that AMRAP.
Yeah.
And keep that AMRAP at an 8 or a 9. It doesn't have to be a 10. Okay. That's where we see problems, right?
Yeah.
So if they can't execute an AMRAP at an 8 or a 9, it might not be good for them, you know?
So if the squat and bench just kind of ran that way, is the deadlift ran the same way?
No.
Yes. Figured that.
No.
So how does that work?
Based off of personal experience and other people's experience with me, I don't know the science about how much harder a deadlift is than a squat or a bench, but it's harder on your body by a lot. And it's on an area of your body where it's posterior, dominated, and we're not nearly as good at that typically. And so where we might be doing AMRAPs over and over, I'll AMRAP the sumo deadlifters a lot more than the conventional.
I'm just talking the triples and the volume and all that. Does that play out the same way, or does that play out different?
A little bit different. Usually I would say, just off the top of my head, it's probably 10 to 15% lower stress on deadlift day because the lift itself is higher stress.
So lower stress, you're talking percentages.
Yeah, either a little bit like we're going to go up to an RPE 8 instead of a 9.
Yeah.
We're probably never going to go to a 10, if it's a healthy athlete, we'll bench to a 10, but we probably won't squat to a 10 very often.
Now, are these all on separate days, or are you putting the lifts together?
Separate days. I don't mind pairing up, squat and bench or deadlift and bench. If you have an athlete that has to do 3 days instead of 4 or 5, then I like doing squat, bench, deadlift, bench, because I want a little bit lower volume on that deadlift day anyway. And so benching kind of fits okay there. And if that's the only way they're going to get it in, then I'm willing to put it there. Otherwise we're typically doing a 4-day split with a upper lower.
All right. So the majority of your focus is going into that part of the training.
Yeah.
And then the accessories are all accessories.
Accessories, usually there's 4 to 6 accessories, depending on the lifter and the lift. But yeah, accessories are very important because obviously, as opposed to some other coaches, like I'm very into muscle building. And so there's going to be a lot of that.
With that being simple, which I agree with, simple is always better. Where do you see the biggest shortcomings from the athletes you work with? Where do they have the hardest times either trying to grasp or the work they don't want to do?
I would say in general, athletes have the hardest time being consistent. Just like I had a hard time, I neglected my deadlift because I was bad at it. And I didn't want to do what it took to get good at it. I just felt like I was not built for it. And I wasn't willing to try to be built for it, And so if I made 98% of my squat and bench days in training, then I probably made 65 to 70% of my deadlift days. And my athletes have the same problem, getting them to start early in the week, One thing I'm really big on, and this is my biggest pet peeve about new athletes, is when somebody comes to me, I'm trying to coach success more than anything.
Yeah.
And if they can take that and apply it to something else in their life, super. But I'll have somebody come to me who hasn't trained in 6 months and they'll say, I want 4 days a week or I want 5 days a week. That ain't realistic for you, homie. You haven't done it 1 day a week for the last fucking half a year.
Yeah.
And so, this girl who traveled a lot for work, she said, hey, I want 4 days a week. And I said, well, I really think you can only handle 3. And that's pushing it. And it's not that she can't handle it. It's just she hasn't made that time or space. And so I already know what's going to happen. I'm going to write 4 days. You're not going to do them. You're going to feel bad. Our relationship gets strained. And then you feel like whether you should pay for this or not, or if you're not committed or whatever. Instead, like I started an athlete last week and he's 39 years old, hasn't lifted in a couple years. He has a background. He's strong. Actually, he's pretty strong. I'm blessed to when you get somebody that can move, you're like, and it's like you tell all the other coaches, look at him. I don't have to fix this.
Yeah.
And so he immediately came in and he could move, but he's a business owner. He's a dad. He hasn't lifted in a couple years. And I said, hey, we're going to do the squat and the bench for 2 weeks only. And then on the 3rd week, we're going to do you squatting on your own, us benching together and deadlifting together, and then you'll go into a 3-day-a-week model. And if you're successful at that till the end of the year, then we'll go into a 4-day-a-week model, right? But I'm not going to put you into that. I want you to be successful. And so let's grow into it instead of slamming our forehead into a brick wall in week 1.
Sure.
So that girl who wanted 4 days that I said she can only take 2 to 3, she got 4 days. And in the first 2 weeks in her 8 workouts, she got done 2 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're -6.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like, well, do I go back? And I'm like, well, no, you fucked up the whole cycle. So let's start over. Just start on day one. I'm not even going to rewrite it. Start on day one and do what you said you were going to do. Or let me change it to what I said you needed to do. One or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have to have that conversation. But ego, you know? So I just like to start people where they can be successful and coach that success and then build upon it. You know, I always tell people, I'm like, hey, if you just PR'd and it was an RPE 8 or 9, take it. Don't take another one unless it's the meat. Okay. And it's okay to walk away with pounds on the bar in the meat too. You know, I said the best thing the Russians ever did was barely PR every year so they could enjoy this longer.
Yeah.
Because I mean, enjoy it as long as you can, guys.
Well, they're getting paid too.
That too. That's the thing though, is maybe they had that money incentive, but still it accomplished the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, why would Yuri Belkin reset the record by 10 to 20 kilos when it only has to be 2.5 or 1 even sometimes, you know? Shit, that's a smart thing to do. And then he can take some time off. He doesn't have to charge all year so hard just to beat that number, you know? Like you said in one of your podcasts I was listening to, it's like, oh man, that lift looked perfect and then I failed. Damn it. That means I got to get stronger, and that takes longer than fixing, you know, this.
Oh yeah, that sucks.
You know?
That sucks.
But if you can go through most of your experience not feeling that way, hell yeah. You know, be successful as long as possible. Small wins as long as possible. Learn how to win.
You wear a lot of hats. So when do you find time to work on your business instead of in it?
I think it helps a little bit my co-owner, Ethan, he's the shit. Like, I'm the front of house guy. He's the back of house guy. Okay. He's a chemist by trade. Smart dude. And do you know what Enneagrams are?
No.
It's like a personality test. I'm a 7, which is like a entertainer, you know? And he's a 2 or a 3, which is like a task-oriented, goal-oriented, look what I did, you know? And it just for his own enjoyment, not even anybody else's, you know?
Yeah.
And so he's a perfect partner for me. And he is so good at our job. And I'm just keeping up. I'm trying to keep up with him, you know? And but I also feed off other people sometimes too. And when it's just me at times, because I'm there all day during the day, you know, sometimes it's easy to get lost in doing laundry or this or that, you know? But I'll be honest, right now, I'm running so many different directions that I don't have time to not try to be good at it, you know? You know, sure, sometimes my client videos take an extra day or two, but I try to make those high quality. And then, you know, sure, sometimes I'm a little bit behind on this or that because I've got an iron in this fire or that fire, but I try not to get involved in things that I don't think I can do a good job of. That's why I didn't host a strongman meet for a few years, because I just honestly didn't think it was going to be good. And I wasn't in the space where I was ready to do that yet, you know? And now I feel like I am. I've got the right support. I've got Joshua, who's one of my clients, who is helping me run the meet, and he's into computers and stuff. So basically, I just created another Ethan to be my Ethan for strongman, you know?
Well, you said a key thing too, because if you're really busy doing the shit that you need to get done, you have a hard time being stressed out about stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know, because there's too much.
Yeah.
You know, too much idle time, then you get stressed out about the stupid shit.
Yeah. I hit a rock bottom recently in something. And, you know, when you do that, all you do is put your head down and get your shit together. You know, it's, you know, people get sad when they have bad things happen. And I'm like, look, it's just a chance to have more hope. You know, whenever you hit rock bottom or whenever you know, get grounded or anything like that, the first step is always good. You know, whenever something bad happens, you know, first step's always good. And, you know, just to know that and to be confident in that and that it's just going to be okay. Then that makes it a little easier. You
said before we started that you jacked your back up a little bit just a few weeks ago. Couple questions with this. When your back was problematic, what we would typically, what I would describe as like it pops out, like it pops and then you're kind of fucked and you can't move, or is it just a gradual, I can't move thing?
Mine's more of a trigger that is sensitive, you know, and when it gets hit, then I shut down.
So what do you mean shut down?
Spasms.
Okay.
So my spasms are to the point where, like, so I had my kids in the morning and I called them into my room before I got up and I said, hey guys, I just want you to know that when I get up, I'm going to like probably have to yell a little bit, because I'm going to be in some pain. But I want you to know that I'm not going to stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's going to change. And as I get warmed up for the day, it's going to get better. And it's not going to be like this forever, but it's going to hurt for a minute, you know? And so what happens is I wake up and I'm, you know, in a complete state of spasming as I wake up, and I can't move. Like and being still hurts too, because you're in spasming. So what's happening when you're spasming is your brain is saying that there's some risk going on down here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sending a signal and shutting you down. Right. And so I'm laying there in a state of spasming, but I also have to go to the bathroom because I just woke up,
Yeah.
and I don't want to just piss on my bed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to roll out of bed, you know, kind of as slowly as I can. And I hit my knees and I have another spasm and I'm on the ground yelling, you know, and then I crawl to the bathroom and pick myself up on the toilet, and I sit down bent over because I can't sit up yet because my trigger's too sensitive to sit up. And so, cause I'm pretty extension intolerant. Okay. And, so then hopefully I can get off the toilet and get in the shower. Now, one of the coolest experiences I ever had with back pain was I was doing a axle deadlift of like 800 pounds with straps, because my hands suck. That's why my deadlift sucks. I did 825 with straps. And so I was doing an axle deadlift and I felt my back, but I had my belt on and it was covering up the issue. And I took my belt off after the rep and I fell to my knees, and I crawled to my car. And I asked somebody to unload the bar for me, which is kind of mean. I crawled to my car and I sat in my car for probably an hour trying to get ready to go inside. And then I crawled inside and I crawled up my stairs, and I was laying on my living room floor in a state of pain, like hard. And I crawled to the bathroom and I turned the hot water all the way up, and I got in the tub in the shower, and I could stand up right away. So the body had gotten a signal from that hot water that said everything's going to be okay. And my brain started to relax those nerves, you know? And so now I do have some things that I can do to get out of that a little bit. And I do know how to like cue my glutes better to like keep my back, you know, and I can, you know, brace hard enough. Like right now, if I brace, I can feel my pain in my low back right now from traveling and, you know, everything. And if I don't do my drills today, tomorrow, the next day, which I'm terrible at, I probably will go into another episode. You know, I don't know how long it'll last, but I can counteract that. I can feel the trigger, and I can get ahead of it and get that healthy car ahead of the pain car a little bit. But right now they're pretty close, you know? So I'm not doing any kettlebell swings today. You know, I'm not doing anything that's going to jeopardize that. I'm going to have to put a hip circle on my knees or a band on my knees and walk for a little bit before I leave here. And maybe I'll do an offset kettlebell walk or two with the bamboo bar with the kettlebell hanging off of it, so I can get my, you know, my torso going too. As far as like protecting my back. But that's how aware of it I am now, you know? And unfortunately, I'm only that aware of it when I feel it. You know, I need to be aware of it when I don't feel it, because it'll keep me from feeling it more, you know, than I'm comfortable with.
So you don't have any triggers when it doesn't happen at all, to be able to know that it's on
Sometimes
the
you can see it coming. What happened in August was literally at the end of July, we were doing an event out on the parking lot for, you know, my best friend Jeff's company, Supplement Superstores, was having a big, you know, parking lot party. And we had an axle deadlift competition, and we were giving away shirts for people who could axle deadlift, you know, a certain amount of weight. Right. And we chose the axle because we didn't have to bring as much weight. You only had to bring like 300 pounds, you know, with the axle, because it's so hard to do an axle deadlift without straps. And, but just from bending over and loading 45s, 25s, and 10s for part of a day, a week later, I started to...
A week later, it's interesting.
It took a minute. It took a minute, yeah. And because I didn't immediately fix it. I didn't immediately get in the gym and do something about it, because I didn't think it was coming. I wasn't aware of it because it hadn't happened in a minute. And my mind wasn't there, but it should have been. Yeah. You know? I wasn't self-aware of it, and I should have been. And then a week later, I was like, what did I do? Fuck. I was bending over, putting those plates on. And it sent me into a 2.5 week, 2 to 3 week spasm fest, you know?
Any other... Well, you kind of mentioned a little bit, because there's pain management, right? I mean, when you're when you're fucked up, there's like hurt, injured, and fucked up. So you're fucked up. When you're fucked up, you got to figure out, the pain management, which what are the strategies that you use for that outside of the hot water?
So I never really have taken pain pills. I've never felt like any need to.
Yeah.
They don't work well enough to make me feel good unless you take a lot, and I'm just not willing to do that. I've never had any addiction issues with any of that shit, or it's just never been there for me. When I was spasming like that, though, I did take muscle relaxers. I didn't realize those were. I just take one, a day usually to get going. When I was in that state, not any other time.
Did it help?
I feel like it calmed the nerves a little bit to make them a little less sensitive, but I was still fucked up the whole time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've tried that.
I'll be honest, I don't really think they did, but I needed them to.
Yeah.
I really needed something at the time.
Yeah.
And so I took them just for that period of time. And if I'm ever doing that, I won't drink at all, because I don't drink much anyway. And I worry about combining those things, especially at my size and with elevated blood pressure sometimes. And I try to stay away from that. And so for me, what feels best in those moments is to get on the ground. And I have a video on my Instagram. It's for the Lock 5 for Andrew Locke. He does his 5 exercises on the ground. It's basically, contracting the glutes, side planks, shoulder taps, and, prone hip extension. And those are really good to do when you're affected, because you can do them when you're in a lot of pain, because they're not very, big. Yeah. And you can scale them down if you need to. You can do your side plank on your knee, or you can do your front plank on your knees and on the couch and activate your abs that way. But those help. I go through a checklist to try to make sure I know what's triggering me, because it might not be what I think it is. It might be my psoas. Say I drove 10 hours here. I'm sitting here a lot. I drive 10 hours back. Well, when I get out of the car, my psoas has been shortened for a long time. And I need to do like some yoga, some warrior one pose, where I can get my psoas in a position where I can loosen it up, which isn't easy to do. Either that, or you got to get body work done, maybe. But I'm starting to get better about it. I'm starting to learn more about it, and like when it's coming and when it's going to happen and how to predict it. But also sometimes I don't know when it's coming, Yeah. Sometimes I don't have time to sit there and do external rotations, and I just want to throw my kid the football, and maybe my shoulder's going to hurt, but at least I know how to get out of it, within a week or two, typically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm getting better about it, but it's tough sometimes.
Right, a little different topic here, because one of the podcasts that you had with Matt, you were talking about, it's like you had this little tiny career as an extra in films, right?
When I was a child.
Yeah. So did you have aspirations to be an actor?
Well, so I don't know. I don't know if I talked about this with Matt or not. So this might be a new topic, but so when I was a kid, when I was in like 3rd and 4th grade, so this company came to Kansas from LA called Kansas Filmworks is what they named themselves. And they were shooting made for TV movies with like Brooke Shields, Martin Sheen, some pretty famous people. And I got to meet them all. And my mom and dad were cast as extras in a bar scene. My mom had like one of those, remember those big clips that pulled all their hair together in the middle? So it was like ladies had like lines here and like a mohawk.
Yeah.
My mom, like, she could have been in a Poison video, she's hot too, So my mom's pulling the Tawny Phillips over here. And the lady, my mom's talkative as heck. And the lady that was casting knows nobody in the city, because we're in Topeka, Kansas. And so she hires her as the assistant casting director. And so I got to be in like 4 or 5 movies, and I saved every time I was on set. You got 2 $20 bills stapled together, and I was 9, and I saved up like $500 and bought a motorcycle. And then I saved up another $400. Like I bought a dirt bike, and I saved up another $400 or $500, and I bought a '67 Mustang at 12.
At 12.
Yeah. And we ended up selling it, and I had a 72 Challenger that my dad and I rebuilt. And then he had 2 68 442s. And so we were into muscle cars when I was in middle school and high school. And that ended when we went to college and we were lower middle class, And then I drove my mom's 89 Lincoln. But my most recent experience being in film is probably the funniest. So I'm working at my old gym about, I think probably 2 years ago in the fall. And I get this weird phone call, and Dave, you probably get messages from guys similar to some of the message I get from guys.
Not as much as I used to.
Yeah.
When you lose a lot of weight, that changes.
Oh, when I was losing weight and I was like getting like ripped, they were like, hey, Daddy, don't lose any more of that belly. I like it right where it's at. You know, like, and I'm just saying, it feels good to be wanted. And those guys know how to compliment a guy, you know?
Gotcha.
I'm just saying, they know what to say because they're one of us. You know what I mean? They know what I like. And so my category is grizzly muscle bear.
Yeah, there's different categories. I forget what they were. Somebody explained them all to me. once.
Yeah. So I'm a grizzly muscle bear. And so I got a phone call, and I was a little weirded out by the phone call at first because they were like, hey, who's the biggest guy there? And I'm like, well, I'm not the tallest, but I guess I'm the biggest, I guess, you know, strength-wise. And they were like, I guess you don't have to be that tall. You can stand on a box. You're built right for this. And I was like, what do you want? What do you want? And he's like, well, we're shooting a commercial and we need a big guy. And I was like, selfishly, I'm kind of like, well, I kind of want to do it. But I thought it was stupid. Like, I knew they were going to pay me a couple $100. And I was telling you about my client, Bo, who was part of the film, you know, film industry for a while. He's in Tokyo, sub Bo. And so I was talking to him about it, and I was like, Bo, you've like been in Harry Potter, you know, or worked on Harry Potter. Like, what should I do this? And he was like, fuck yeah. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, go have a good time. Like, it's just something, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, just go do something stupid. So the instruction was I had to go to a racetrack, this dirt racetrack, and they had a monster truck, and they were making a commercial for this flashlight called the Tac Light.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen it? Okay. So they came out with the Tac Light Pro. And so everything in the Tac Light Pro commercial is bigger. Now, at the time, I did not know that the original Tac Light had 500,000 views on it. Right. And so they made this Tac Light Pro. And so instead of a truck running over it, like the original commercial, is a monster truck. Instead of an attacker from the original commercial, it was me. And I'm like, you know, and it's silly. It's goofy. I'm wearing like a tank top and like camo pants or something. And it's like 20 degrees outside. It's chilly. It was in like late November. And I made a few $100, but I kind of forgot about it because it was only a one night deal, you know, and I kind of forgot about it and I left. And I guess like maybe 6 months later, I get a text from a buddy who lives in Dallas. And he goes, hey, dude, I fell asleep on the couch and I woke up and you're on my TV on ESPN. I didn't know that they were selling tack lights on ESPN. You know what I'm saying? So I should have, A, asked for more money, and B, I didn't know this was going to be seen by I thought this was not going to be seen by anybody. I thought it was just going to be on YouTube. And like maybe I would send it to a couple friends like to get a laugh. But it's literally a worldwide commercial, and I got paid, I think, like
so this is something we can find if we search for it.
Oh, it's there. Yeah. And it's really dumb. I look silly, but it's funny, and it was cool. And, you know, it was an experience. So that was my most recent acting. Yeah.
So you're still into it.
Oh, thespian, you know?
Yeah.
I will say that in my high school career, so I've always been involved in everything, like in high school and college. Like I was in the student government, and like, you know, on my teams, and, you know, involved in everything I could. You know, it's the only thing I never did that I wish I could have done was we had a really good acting group at our high school that was all improv. It was the Topeka West Players. And I always wanted to be in that group. And I just never had time to try. I don't know if I would have been good at it or not, but I feel like I could have. Plus, like the diversity you get with having a huge guy as a part of your group, there's so many more things you can do vertically.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really wanted a chance to do that. I thought it would have been fun. So now in my life, I still want to do 10 minutes of stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And so sometimes like, I'll write down like little bits of like things I think will be funny in stand up. Like one of my favorite ones is when I was a child, it was a big deal to have one of those like Bigfoot trucks that was battery powered, you know, and the kids that had those, and they weren't fast or anything. They were just cool looking. Yeah. And the Barbie Corvette, the Bigfoot truck was the guy one, you know. Now it's like they have like Jeeps and John Deeres and whatever you want, you can get for your kid if you're willing to pay. So we didn't have that kind of money as a kid where we were getting like, you know, Bigfoot, you know, and my friend had one, and his dad is out there sitting on the porch, and we're playing out in the front yard. And I'm like, hey, could I drive the Bigfoot, you know, with you? And he goes, yeah, hop in. And I'm probably like 7 or 8. And I hop in, and he pushes the gas and it doesn't go anywhere. And and the dad's trying to be cool. He's like, the battery's dead. Like, let me go charge it up. And so we go play and we're like pumped to come back 2 hours later and battery's charged up. And the dad's like, get out of it, to his son. He's like, get out of it. Let him drive it by himself. That fucker wouldn't go anywhere. That was the first time as a kid I knew I was overweight.
Yeah. That was the first time.
Yeah. So I feel like I got to make that into a bit sometime,
Yeah.
But there's so many little dumb things that happen in life that are so funny, that I feel like those should be celebrated.
Oh yeah.
I would love to do a little stand up. I think it'd be fun.
Any other comedy bits that you were working on
that I can say here?
No, you can say anything.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to get into any impressions today or not. You know what I mean? If I think of another one before we're done, I'll definitely bring it up.
Yeah. Were there any other topics that you wanted to talk about that I didn't bring up?
I'm open to talk about any of it. Let's say, I would love to bring up, the federational stuff. I think is cool. It's important. And so recently I got involved in the WRPF, and originally, I'll be honest, when the WRPF came out, I was critical because I thought they had an opportunity to do something that they didn't do, which is be strict, and bring that to all the things under their umbrella. Because in powerlifting, the decisions I try to make for me and my community is based on the common good of the sport. And less federations is better always, because who gives a shit about nationals when nobody comes, or just don't have it, but I think it's better when you do, overall, like I think top down. And so at first I thought the WRPF kind of squandered that opportunity a little bit, but I just think that it wasn't big enough yet. It had to have time to grow again, because they started grassroots pretty much. It didn't seem like that because they had a couple pro meets, but at first they were like all untested with no testing. And now that they've added tested, it's like 85% of their business, just like everybody else. Yeah. And so to see that growth and then to get involved in it now on the level that I am, as a referee and as a meet director, now I'm getting involved. Jake Hartman and I are going to do a regional meet in February in Des Moines. That should be great. The things that WRPF and Garrett Fear are doing to move forward in the WRPF is important to me. The way that they're handling, basically, drug tested, walk out. If you're untested, you can choose to use mono. That's how most of us feel. It's not standardized yet, but it's going that way. Also, bringing multiply back into the same fed as the other things. Yes, please. The more we can do together, the better. The more we can put all that under one umbrella, in my opinion, the better. I think the USAPL is great on their own. They're a great standalone. They have the best national championship in the nation in powerlifting. That's the most representative of the sport, for the top end for tested lifters. And so I'm happy to be involved in both of those, but I think the WRPF is doing something really good that includes tested, untested, and multiply divisions, and I'd love to see single ply get more active too,
My only thing with that I would put out there is being around forever, and seeing many new federations kind of come and go, is the question that I would pose is what's going to be different than anybody else? And you don't need to answer, but it's just a thought, right? And then how is the longevity going to be embedded into it, that old heads don't become old heads and the same shit just repeats? Like a board of active lifters that are always part of it, so you have current voice instead of relying on old voice, which seems to be one of the bigger issues. Yeah,
so that's a great point. And the WRPF is not run by old heads,
they will be.
It's run by young heads that were taught by the right old heads.
Yeah, but they will get older.
You know what I'm saying? My old heads are Al, and the other guys I came in with, and they impressed upon me in a way that I think was forward. And that's what I'm trying to do too. So I think the people in the WRPF now are the right people to do that. The right young heads with an old head, experience.
Yeah.
And so when those people become old heads, I don't think that they're not going to be current.
They all do though.
I think right now they're doing their best to stay current and be humble.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, you know, and I think that, you know, it's inevitable that people are going to get old, but also like, for example, the state chair has to change every 14 months.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. They need like term limits or some shit.
We have that. So, you know, at first we tried to fool around with the idea of like yearly, but that's too much.
That's too much.
Yeah,
you can't make a difference.
When you have a year, you can't make a difference. So they're talking about term limits. They're talking about like very strict requirements for these things. You know, I applied for state chair yesterday for the state of Kansas. Normally I don't care to be state chair. I don't have to be involved at that level because I just do what I do anyway. I'm not going to stop that, but I do think that, you know, we have an opportunity to help people along and to get more involved. So I'm gonna, you know, and so Jake and I are going to do that regional meet. We were involved in nationals a few weeks ago, and the people that are involved are the meet directors, in my opinion, that have pushed powerlifting forward in the last 10 years, not pulled it back.
Yeah.
You know,
well, it's pushed forward a lot.
Yeah. And we ran away from the people that pushed it back, in my opinion, you know, old heads, so to speak.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I had to put one and one together there a little bit. Yeah.
I just don't think it's important to talk about or give that any attention.
No, it's not. It's not. But that's an example of what I'm talking about. You know, is I think, you know, looking at past patterns is everybody starts for the right reasons. But then the further that they actually distance themselves from competing or the competitors. I mean, you have a gym, so you're around them all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
The further they get away from that, the more it becomes more like this corporate structure that's just how to make money.
Yes.
Which is important. You have to have money to grow the federation. It's very fucking important.
Right.
It matters. But when then they lose touch.
Right.
Right. And then that's when shit starts to go south.
Here's an example. So like for this regional meet we want to host, that we're about to announce the dates of, so we literally have requirements for how many banners in the back room we have to have with a QR code for people to pull up Lifting Cast. That's lifter friendly. You know, every single thing that we're doing is lifter first, meet director second. Now, if you can do the math right, we can all win, you know? But in order to do that, it has to be lifter first, always. And, you know, I even tell people sometimes if I'm a dick about something, I'm doing it lifter first. You know, and then I explain myself.
Yeah.
You know,
well, that can be tricky to the person you're speaking to, because when you say lifter first, you're talking about all lifters, not this specific one that's bitching at the current moment.
That wants to be happy. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's harder to talk to people about the greater good when they're selfish. And sometimes you might not be able to make them happy. Yeah. But, you know, it's tough too.
But there's a lot of people in the sport.
There is. You know? And see, that's my thing about the old heads is I'm not afraid to change. I'm not afraid to be wrong. I thrive off efficiency. And so if I learn a better way, then cool. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. You know, if, you know, let's say I was, you know, folding my clothes in the other room and your son showed me a better way to do it, I'd just do it his way. You know, I hate doing laundry. I wish it was easier. You know, if somebody gave me a better way tomorrow, that's my way. You know, I don't have to be right. I don't care to be right. I just want to find the best information. And I started feeling like every time we've done this thing where old heads prevail, you know, like I try to make decisions that affect us in our region, and hopefully that spreads to the national level. Hopefully. It's hard to sometimes because not everybody's on the same damn page. But if we can do everything in our region that leads towards nationals, then a lot of people can be on the same page. But what happens is none of these people are happy and they want to go, you know, play with their ball somewhere else because they're selfish or they don't like it or they can't get along with everybody. You know, for me, I put my thoughts and needs and wants second to the greater good of the sport. Okay. And then I serve myself within that. Right. So when it comes to a lot of these other federations and people breaking off and, okay, cool, you're in 3 states and you have a national tournament. National championship. Cool. Yeah. What's that do for anybody besides you? Yeah. Shit.
Well, the other side of that, to look at kind of what's transpired over probably 5 decades. Yeah. Is there used to be a lot of federation loyalty. That does not exist anymore at all. Right. It's very little.
It does in the USAPL.
Yes, I would certainly agree.
And
They
we're
just proved
trying,
it.
we're trying to treat people so good
Yeah.
in the WRPF and be so transparent about our flaws, shortcomings, and successes and where we're heading that I think we can get that empathy from the lifters that we're doing the right thing. We're trying to do the right thing,
Yeah.
you know? And I hope, you know, that we feel that way. And the USAPL too. Sometimes people have felt that.
No, but you make a really good
empire.
point though, because that's a good model.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's going to have flaws, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's got a lot of successes because a lot of people just proved, right? Because of the shit that went down with that there's loyalty that stayed with that.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, I'm fighting that in my home area. You know, I thought everybody in my area, I worked really hard during that time when we split off to keep as many states together as we could in our region.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought all my referees were on the same page. I thought everybody was on the same page. I thought my state chair was on the same page, to the point where they told me to my face that they were. And then when I left and they had an opportunity to be on the executive board and do their own thing, then that was all, go fuck yourself.
It's not a bad thing though, right? Because you don't want those people with you.
I don't want them with me, but I don't like how it toxifies the other areas of the state and the region.
Yeah.
And because people are in pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm having to fight against these pockets of people who think I'm an asshole when all I'm trying to do is provide the best possible scenario for them, not me. I had a better scenario before. I was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't have to change. I changed uncomfortably to make other people more comfortable, and then got my throat shit down for that by people that I trusted. And that's not okay for me.
It's not, but it provides competition and motivation.
Dave, I got blocked from my state's Instagram page while I was still hosting meets in that federation. And they gave me a Hall of Fame plaque and advertised it on their page while I was blocked. How dumb is this shit?
Yeah. Well, it's dumb.
It's stupid.
Right? But you know, those are people not to associate with now. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but there's not enough people in this sport to where I want to throw away half my state.
No, I get that.
You know, I want them all with us. It would have been better.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them on our team. Like, they were crucial. They were important, and they still should be to me. And,
but if you have a better product, you'll get the lifters.
I get it.
You see what I'm saying?
I get it. But it was a way better scenario when the setup was unfuckwithable.
Oh, of course.
You know, and maybe we'll get back there at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind competition. I could care less. I don't care if my meets sell out. I don't care if their meets sell out. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
All I want is the best thing for the lifter, and I feel like I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was better for the lifter before. So now they're benefiting off of the 10 years of meet directing I did when they didn't host meets.
Mm-hmm.
And all the referees we brought up, all the lifters we put in, the multi-thousand people Facebook groups that we built. And I'm starting over, and they're benefiting from the 10 years of success that we had, which is fine with me, but it makes you an asshole.
To some, maybe.
To me.
Right? But you made a lot of mistakes during that time that you won't remake again.
True. And I'm trying not to take it personally.
Yeah.
I just don't like that person anymore because they're a liar.
Right?
Yeah. They're a liar.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't, I got nothing in me for that. You know? And now if they would have had a conversation with me or said like, hey, I know we've worked together for 10 years and, you know, I respect you and this is what we're going to do. Cool. You know, I had another friend that did that. So now not only have we separated and we're in 3 different federations in our state now, we just added a 4th one because somebody thought they were too expensive. So now we've got 4 federations in the state and we're even more fragmented. And, you know, I told him, I said, hey, I respect you and you're my friend. I don't think it's good for the sport, but I understand that it's good for you and that's okay. Let's move on. I don't want to talk about it anymore. You know, and we just won't talk about that. And I still might host a meet at his gym under the federation that I'm with too. Like that's open, but in my opinion, we're better together.
Yeah.
You know, and I just don't think we all need to take our ball and go play somewhere else with it. I think we should learn how to play together. I think we should learn how to bend. I think we should learn for people, we should learn how to bend. And I've learned how to bend, you know, to a point. And I know I was doing the right thing. And I felt like we all should have done that. And we put a lot of thought and care and effort into that. And then it was not reciprocated by the other people involved. So.
Which ultimately, I'll reframe again, which ultimately is good to know sooner than later.
Yes.
Right. Because it would have happened later.
It would have. Yeah.
You know,
it would have. It was already happening probably,
Yeah.
you know, and I just didn't know it because I just thought great things of everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
To circle back to something that you said just a little bit ago, which I caught a lot of shit. It's been over a year because I made a statement that the majority of the sport is drug free. Right. And it blows my mind that I caught so much shit for that, because if you just go look at open powerlifting and look at the numbers, you know, either a lot of people are taking a lot of really fake shit or there's a lot of drug-free lifters that are in the sport.
I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm guessing 85%.
Well, that's what you just said. That's why I wanted to circle back, as you said about 85% by not having drug-tested meets. So your drug-tested meets are bigger and pull more lifters than the ones that are tested.
So it's a couple things go into that. So people don't know this, but my first USPA Nationals, I totaled 2,000 and I was drug-free. But I was competing untested. I didn't care. So the top 3 guys at that meet, this is a funny story. So the top 3 lifters in that meet, I think I took first, Dennis Cornelius took second, and Sean Doyle took third. And we were all 3 drug-free at the time. And, you know, I just think that back then I did like the fact that you could just show up and do it, and it wasn't such a big deal all the time. Yeah. Because I don't really think that the drug testing should be that big of a deal on the local level. Like, for me personally, drug tested state records don't mean anything. Right. Yeah. But I understand they do mean something to somebody. And so I'm fine with it. I'm cool with that. I'm good with that. But, I don't know what happened in our sport where somebody needed the badge of drug free to be okay with who they are. You know? I get it on the large level, but I kind of think it's a waste of money on the small level. I used to pay $90 for drug tests. Now I pay $135.
What a weird change though, because if I go back far enough, the drug-free guys didn't want anybody to know because they didn't want to be criticized as lying. Yeah. Because that's what would generally happen.
Weird. The culture's changed, man.
Yeah.
A lot. But I think that the culture now in powerlifting is a lot more reflective of our national culture than it used to be.
Well, then that would mean that it's becoming more mainstream, which is what everybody's been wanting to push for. Yeah. Right. Which is good or bad.
It's the only reason I have a gym.
Yes.
It's the only reason I have a gym. It's the only reason I host meets, because the influx of people that support drug-free powerlifting, and I'm all about it. It's great. I love it. I think it's awesome.
Well, I think it's always been that way.
It always has been that way, but we never had categories for it unless you were just specifically lifted in that fed.
Yeah. And well, the people that are noticed are the ones that are going to be the top, you know, which they may not be. Yeah. Right. That's more than likely they're not.
Yeah.
Right?
And, you know, I like how we do it. You know, we test the top 10%. You know, why would we test outside of that? It doesn't matter to me. You know, I don't care about if somebody is using and skirting by and they're placing 20th. So be it. So be it. They might as well be natural. Yeah. You know, the only person they're messing up with is themselves. You know, no big deal. But when I got into it, there was none of that. Like we wore knee wraps, we competed untested. Yeah. You know, winners win.
So when you went on, how big of a boost did you see?
So, well, first off, I had like none in my system. I thought I had a problem with my stuff, you know, because.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because you already were at a very strong
I was already
level.
At 2,000.
Yeah.
So I was already at 2,000, and you know, my natural test was at 176. I had monitored it for 3 years, and it went from 209 down to 176. And the doctor said, "Hey, go on." You know, and of course, I took more than he told me to at times. But I'm also, honestly, I'm not an aggressive user of that. I've skipped 6 months of shots this year. So mostly from laziness, you know, and not working on something specifically. I didn't need to, I do need some of it for my baseline period. And that's where I am now as an adult, you know, like that's all I want.
Well, it's literally can be a pain in the ass.
Literally, you know, I can't reach that far. It's a pain in the adult for me. So, you know, you go back and, you remember Greg Knuckles? Yeah. And he used to say 10%. And it was about 10%. I did 2,000 without it. And I ended up at 2364 after 3 more years. Yeah. So I gained some size and strength during that time naturally because I was going to. And I gained 40 pounds. So I was going to get stronger no matter what. Add that 10%. We're probably right about there. Yeah. So I think that's the kind of bump I got.
Yeah.
No, I squatted 834 in reps naturally.
Okay. See, I think those are good examples to put out there, because by no means am I against it. Like, don't get that fucking wrong. By no means, but I am against people taking it too early, because I think it hinders their back end.
I was 30 and was done having kids. I wasn't going to ever mix those two things. I was never going to jeopardize my family life for that. I think people could learn something from that kind of patience with those things. And, I think, we find out as we go further and further, like if you talk to 10 people you trained with 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and you talk to 10 people that you train with now, the doses are way different. The knowledge is way different.
Oh yeah.
The chemicals are way different,
Well, as I said, I think it hurts the potential back end, right? Because if they start too soon, then maybe they tap out at 1,700 total.
Yeah. So I would say that for most people, if they go hard, they'll fizzle quick. That wasn't the case with me. That was just my body. It wasn't that. I did not go hard at that at all. And so for me, it was strictly just my back. It wasn't anything that I did to redline my system like that. Like, I just unfortunately got injured, you know, but I do tell people like, hey, the faster the rocket goes up, the fucking quicker it's coming down.
Well, you've seen it. Right? I mean, we've all seen it over and over. So it's not like we don't have science to prove what we're saying.
We're not soothsayers. We're not predicting the future. We know that we're right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's no studies to support this, but I got a lot of people that have been around for 30 decades that all have seen it.
It's like everything else. Remember, we just talked about making the smallest improvements possible and staying healthy. Same. Same with this. Same thing. You know, I think it was wilder before because we saw some very wild examples in the pioneering of raw lifting too.
Yes.
But now that we've seen so many excellent examples drug tested, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Those guys are insane. Jesus right now.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. I mean,
Ray?
it's crazy.
These guys are nuts. They're 100 pounds heavier than me. They're huge. They're big guys. They're in their 400s.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because usually I would say super about 330.
I was 365. Like Julius was like over 440 for a while. Those guys in the USAPL, I know they're over 420. Some of them. Jesus, I think is closer to 400. I'm not sure. But man, there's some freaks, man. Some of these guys that are tested are so good. And it starts back with Jesse Norris, and then John Hack, while he was in that federation. And then, now there's still a laundry list of those people because it's so popular. We have a girl that deadlifts 462 on a stiff bar at 123 in our gym. And she got 10th at nationals. Wow. She went for an all-time world record deadlift on her third attempt and didn't get it. But her deadlift is so competitive, and she got 10th overall. That's how tough it is right now.
I love that.
It's so good. It's so good.
I mean, it's the kind of, she's got to get better, obviously, but to compete. But
well, there's no reason I should have gone to nationals and won when I did. And the amount of competition they have now is so awesome. And it also means like sometimes in the untested side, like I just saw, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but Zach, who you interviewed last week, Myers, he tore his pec this week.
Oh,
yeah. So he's out of the meet this weekend.
A full tear?
One of the good guys. I don't know how heavy it is. He just posted like a shirtless picture of it, and he's such a spark plug. He's built like me, but
Strong
skinny.
as fuck, man.
And he's such a spark plug. He's so powerful. But the problem is in the untested side is there's not enough lifters where, we have that much depth, but on the tested side, man, you can take a year off and nobody cares, Lane Norton took a few years off and came back and did awesome. And, he's not number one right now, but he's up there, but the competition is awesome. I love it.
Well, that's also dealing with less federations too, kind of what you were talking about earlier.
Bingo. And that's why I'm passionate about it. And we see the good it's doing for them. But on the other side of this coin, with all the other federations, everybody wants to take their ball and run. And we just can't make a decision for the greater good. And it kills me because, like I've got ego just like anybody else, but I don't have enough ego to do that. When we did all this splitting off, you don't think people asked me to start a federation? I said, fuck no. I'll learn how to play nice with other people. Like that's That's a common thing that we do when we're children. And if we can't do that, then we're children.
Mm-hmm.
Children as adults. And I can't stand that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Other topics that you wanted to talk about? I actually asked that already. That's
No,
that was a tested, untested.
I do. I have like a whole
yeah.
I got a whole list somewhere here.
Yeah.
Well,
let's take a bathroom break, then find your list, and we'll go from there.
We'll have a couple things to wrap up.
Yeah. I gotta piss anyhow.
I have
one of the ways that you can support the podcast is by purchasing or picking up our limited edition apparel. The shirt that I have on right now is one of the only shirts that we've brought back for a second time. Normally we'll never do that, but the only reason we brought this one back for a second time is it sold out within 6 hours. So we brought this one back. We also got a second one that we just dropped. It's our, I guess, just Halloween edition shirt. Go to EliteFTS.com or go to the link in the description. This really does help us out because this directly supports the Table Talk podcast. Thank you guys. Enjoy the show. All right, we're back again. Something that you mentioned during the break was I'm going to add it to one of the things that I was going to say, what are 5 things that lifters should be more aware of? So this will be the first one because you already started on that one, just as far as slowing down. But it wasn't just in a broad sense, like slow down, you don't need to do everything in 2 years.
Right.
It was actually related to the tempo of the lift. So go into those.
Yeah. So just like we talked about slowing down your career, so to speak, in lifting at least, because the slower you grow, the longer you keep it, like we talked about. And the faster you go, the quicker you can fizzle. And so like we have beginners in a lot, high schoolers, beginning lifters, etc. So one day I'm watching these 65 high schoolers work out, and every one of them is like, they hit the hole faster than I can see. They're going at light speed, and their knees are collapsing, their ankles are collapsing, they're not using their glutes, they're recoiling out of the hole, and it looks painful to me because I know that I would hurt if I was doing what they're doing. I just know that for a fact. And so when we were done with that session with these high schoolers, we're teaching them how to spot, and we're teaching them how to stay safer when they lift. And we're watching this, and at the end, I just pulled them all back together, and I said, "Hey guys, slow down, slow down." And when I tell my clients this, Joe Sullivan squat, I'll say it over and over, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that squat at this pace, but he set 3 all-time world records in front of me, having the best pacing on a squat that I think there is. And it's intentional. He controls every portion of it. And if he fails, it's usually due to system failure, not to, failure because he didn't come out of the hole clean enough or his ass shot back, or a lot of those problems happen because people aren't under control. And they think that they have to go fast because velocity does help. I'm not saying it doesn't, but you have to go. People always say, how fast should I move? And I say, as fast as you can move under control, period. So now let's go further. So not only can we slow down our career of lifting, and we can slow down our individual lifts, well, we can slow them down more. Okay. The less aware they are and the more they need to slow down, add tempo, add a pause, slow them down more. If you have lifters that go over RPE all the time and redline all the time and max out all the time when it says not to, well, you can control that. You can control that with what bar you choose. That's why I like bar variety. Yeah. You can control that with the bar you choose. You can control that with the set and rep scheme. You can control that with how much you give them on tempo for how slow it needs to be, So if you have a lifter that is constantly sinking and heaving when you think that's not best for them, now it might be best for me, but I'm different, Most of them, I want the soft touch. And in order to get that soft touch when they haven't been doing it, you can put them on a 4 or 5 second tempo. It can also keep them from hurting themselves if they go too intense all the time. And so no matter what, when you slow the lift down, you bring more attention to the movement. And, sometimes that's awkward. That's okay. It's typically going to be safer. So slowing things down in the squat and the bench, and sometimes even the deadlift, there's some real benefit in having a long negative on a deadlift for you to protect your posterior chain and learn how to move better.
Well, I think the bigger thing to slow down on the deadlift is the intention of the start. you know, especially with the bars that we have now. You know, not only will it help their lifts, but it's going to help their positioning
And balance.
before it comes off the floor.
Balance too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always tell them I'm in the sumo, slow, fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the squat, it's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Same thing with the bench. I want it consistent. And honestly, I want the first rep faster because the first rep for strong people is usually way too slow, raw.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had that issue. Hunter Henderson is a goddess of powerlifting and bodybuilding, and she did 352 for 2 the other day and 363 for 1, which is probably going to be her second attempt, I think, at the American Pro this weekend. And, you know, her first rep is slow like mine, you know, and that's what she's worked on that just like anybody else has. I don't coach on her or anything. I'm just a fan of her and a friend of her in my gym. But sometimes, you know, you want that first rep a little bit faster in the bench, but, you know, when you slow it down, you're usually in pretty good control, you know? And, you know, like you said, with the deadlift, there's other ways to do that. Yeah. You know, maybe slowing down the deadlift is taking your 20 reps and cutting them into 10 sets of 2, you know? Yeah. You know, or going light enough that you can do cluster sets. You know, sometimes it's using accommodating resistance instead. You know, sometimes it's using heavier chains. So, you have a lifter that just came out of a hard cycle, but they're not going to go into a meet for quite a while. So, okay, let's insert chains. So in the hole, it's not so hard and it's not so hard on their body. And then on the way up, they feel better. Yeah. I think we need to insert we can still work on strength. Yeah. There. We need to insert a little caveat in here that the technique still has to be on par with what it is. Yeah. Normal. So I think that by slowing it down, it's always going to be better that way. Well, the bands can jack people up. I don't use sometimes. Bands. Yeah. I use chains mostly. Okay. Right. So I'm okay with like a front band on the deadlift or even banded deadlifts. Yeah. Even though I don't understand it so much about pen to paper when it comes to that. Yeah. But love chains. Love chains on squat. Love chains on bench. Deadlift not so much. Yeah. With deadlift, I would rather vary the height off of boxes and work somebody gradually down so their body's like accommodating to that rather than an accommodating resistance. Like I use that as the resistance that's accommodating. Where on the squat and the bench, I fucking love chains. All right. So I'm going to count that as 2, right? Because like slow down overall and then slow down the lift, right? So that's 2 things. So we need 3 more. We need 3 more. Let's see here. It could even be takeaway advice if it's not on the takeaway advice. I would say being just consistent in the way that you enter and exit the gym. I think that would have added longevity to my career if I would have been consistent on how I entered and exited the gym. And that means the way I warmed up. Okay. The way I was intentional about my lifting, you know? I was a bull in a china shop, Dave. Like I put the weight on and I did it and I had a fun time doing it. You know what though? That makes you relate to the person that is that if they come across it with you. 1,000,000%. Yeah. So now you understand, you know, because some people would try to completely fix that where it needs to just be harnessed. Right. Because you fix it, they're leaving. Yeah. 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 So the way I enter and exit the gym and prepare for workouts for sure. You know, I said earlier that I'm like 340 right now, but I feel better when I'm 310. Well, the reason I feel better is not because I'm skinnier, so to speak, or look better or feel more handsome or any of that shit. Because my body feels better when I care for it more. And so up that care, I feel better. I excel better. I'm working harder. Business is going better. That extra amount of care. So I'm bad at doing the boring shit, but the boring shit and the consistent shit is what lets you go wild. Because when you have that stuff nailed down, then, you know, you're not running with your head on fire all the time. You know, you're more under control and you can predict your outcomes better. And, you know, I think that's probably the 4th one. It is. And I think that's so important for me. So let's see, we got to have a 5th one now. Oh, should have been number 1. Community and environment. Community and environment, you know. We work really hard at community and environment, and it doesn't feel like hard work because it just feels like the right thing to do, you know. Yeah, I'm a powerlifting guy and yeah, I'm a strongman guy, but our Olympic lifters are dope, you know. And yeah, I'm a untested guy, but our tested lifters are dope. You know, everybody needs that love and support for what they're trying to do in our gym. And I love building that community. It's fun, you know, and
how would you explain that to somebody that, you know, trains at home and has never been, you know, it's all because online is obviously bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of lifters, you know, with home gyms going through the roof a few years ago that have never been in a gym, never been around that community. The only time they may get it is a meet and they feel a little weird. So how do you sell that to somebody that doesn't even know what that means?
That's a good point. So I always say, I mean, the quickest way from point A to point B is a straight line. And if you walk in the door with 300 people that give a shit, I would hope that you would do better. You know, like we talked about, you know, people teaching themselves how to coach, you know, people teaching themselves how to have therapy, you know, or how to grow mentally or have self-help. It's a little bit better with a guide, and that doesn't have to be a coach. That could be a peer, you know? I get a lot of joy. Like there were guys lifting last night after like 10 PM that are tagging each other in a video. And, you know, I love that, you know, that they have community there when we're not there, you know? And I love seeing that. I love seeing people, you know, outside of the gym doing their own thing with people they just met there, you know, people getting married that met themselves there, you know, like stuff like that. I mean, I love that. I got to be an officiant for a wedding, you know, and, you know, one of the highlights, you know, and so I understand training at home. I used to train at home too for a short period of time, but community was way better. So I think this sport grows by community. It doesn't grow by selfishness or loneliness. I think it grows by community. And I think you can serve yourselves by getting around like-minded people. And, you know, I think it's super valuable. So of course I love what we're doing, you know, and, you know, I think the community and the culture of it and having that kind of culture where, you know, hey, you squat high. You know, I think that's huge because a lot of people don't have that. And then it just leads to people talking behind their back and, you know, shit talking. And that's not real community. You know, you got to be willing to be a little bit bold. And, you know, David LaMartina used to train with me and some of the guys, and he was a really talented deadlifter and strength athlete. And he does bodybuilding now mostly. And one time we were talking before I started working out and he goes, hey, your breath smells bad today. And I was like, thanks. I'm fucking glad you're the first person that said anything, you know, and I've probably talked to 30 people and thank you for letting me know, like, thank you, please. Like, just help me be self-aware if I'm not, you know? And that's the kind of people I want to be around and the atmosphere I want to be around, you know?
Is there anything on that list that we didn't hit?
Well, I don't think so. You know, we shot a few videos where we got to go through a few simple tips that I hope everybody enjoys. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to be up here with you, Dave. Like, I'm not that involved as an athlete anymore, but honestly, I'm having more fun now than I did when I was an athlete, probably because it's not so much pressure on the athletic side. I don't know that I really felt that much pressure to begin with because I was having so much fun, but I'm getting to enjoy this part too. And sure, I haven't figured out training for myself yet in post-injury JP era, but I got fucking time. I will, and I want to. And learning a new normal is hard, especially while you feel like you're being pulled at 6 different directions somewhere else, let alone giving it to yourself. And that's the number one thing I have to get better about. And we'll call that the 5th or 6th tip is give yourself the care that you know you need, that you tell everybody else to have. You know, if I did everything for myself, I tell everybody else to do for themselves, I'd be the golden example, but I'm not. And it's because I need to be humble enough to take that fucking advice and do it for myself. And, you know, it's not even a humility thing. It's just maybe even a self-doubt or fear issue, you know, where I don't know that I can do that. I haven't tried it, you know, and, but to give myself the kind of care to feel the way that I want to feel is important to me. And I think everybody else should do that too. And you can be kind to other people and be selfish about your own care. You can do both.
What would be the best way for people to follow you or find you?
So Instagram, JP_lifts_SBC. Our gym is strong_barbell_club. The meets that we host are on Lifting Cast for both federations. You know, we have a website, strongbarbellclub.com. I coach people. If you want to talk to me about it, inbox me. If somebody else is a better fit for you, I'll pass you on. One thing about me is I know what I know and I know what I don't know. and I'll dabble in this shit and I'll talk to you about it. But a lot of this stuff I'm not going to try to make money on because I'm not the professional, somebody else is.
Yeah.
And I know those resources now, you know, which is great. I know where to go and I can help you with that. So always feel free to message me, guys. I love doing this. I love being a part of it. And, you know, I'm just so thankful for the cool people I get to meet along the way. And that's you and anybody listening that I get to talk to after this. Just thanks for being a part of it, because, you know, this is my dream job. And even when it sucks, it's my suck.
Yeah.
And I get to choose that. And that's the only way I want to live this life.
Any final thoughts?
No, you're a great human. Thanks, man.
Thank you for coming out. It's been my pleasure. We are done.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.